of people from the Sioux that headed down to help out in a different country with a pretty significant challenge that they've had down there. And I also wanted to tell another story about two amazing young ladies in our community who raised some money for a little boy with cancer that they had never met. And these two little girls, Sydney Drover and Nicole Stang, live in Sault Ste. Marie. And through one of their mothers, they heard of a little boy in Edmonton who had cancer, and they raised a couple $1,000s for that little boy without having met him. And I think that that is tremendous, and those two acts taken together showed the kindness and spirit that this community has. So I wanted to recognize those two little girls, and I wanted to recognize all the men who went down to Florida to help out. On that note, Councillor Butland, you had something you wanted to add?
Yeah, same vein. It's plugging Sault Ste. Marie and what its residents do. Canadian Tire raised more funds. You know, the coupons you put in the box as you're going in or leaving. It outdid 490 other stores, Canadian Tire stores in Canada. They raised $80,000 through the community, and as a result, corporate Canadian Tire put in another $20,000. So there's $100,000 that has gone to the YMCA for young people to participate in all sorts of recreation. So that's just wonderful to be the best in Canada. No surprise and not a first. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Mr. Clerk, if you can call the meeting to order, please.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, under agenda item 1, adoption of minutes. Motion by Councillors Shoemaker and Nero. Resolved that the minutes of the regular council meeting of 2017-09-11 be approved.
All in favor? Carried.
Under agenda item 3, declarations of pecuniary interest.
Councillor Turco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 11.1.3, municipal law enforcement officer bylaw. My spouse employed by police services.
Thank you. Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 6.17, 267 Cathcart Street. The owner of that property is a client of my law firm.
Thank you. Councillor Nero.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Agenda item 6.14, Office of the Fire Marshal and Emergency Management Review. My brother is employed by Sault Ste. Marie Fire Services.
Thank you. Anything else, Council? Mr. Clerk.
Under agenda item 4, approve agenda as presented. A motion by Councillors Hupenin and Turco. Resolved that the agenda and addendum for the 2017-09-25 City Council meeting as presented be approved.
All in favor? Carried.
Under agenda item 5, proclamations and delegations. 5.1, Culture Days. Kathy Fisher, Curator, Ermitinger Clerg, National Historic Site, and Lori Carlisle, Education Officer, Art Gallery of Algoma, are in attendance.
Welcome to Council.
Thank you. Mayor and Council, Culture Days is an opportunity for Canadians to explore, participate in cultural activities in their communities. It is a provincial and a national level grassroots event promoted across our country.
We are here to proclaim and invite you to create, participate, and share within Sault Ste. Marie at our international celebration of culture and the arts. Sault Ste. Marie's Culture Days 2017 is a 2-day event.
So, on Friday, September 29th, this Friday from 10 till 3, Culture Days in Sault Ste. Marie will encompass the Centennial Library, Art Gallery of Algoma, and the Ermitinger Clerg National Historic Site. And again, as you know, every Culture Day, that means that we fire the cannon every 15 minutes. We will begin that on Wednesday before Culture Days for our Fall Festival Education Days. Included in our partnership for the event this year, we would like to also recognize Sioux Community Career Centre, the Sault Ste. Marie and Area Local Immigration Partnership. Culture Days will continue at the Ermatinger-Clergue National Historic Site with an official kickoff Friday at 3:30. Come and join us on the front lawn. During the afternoon kickoff, it will progress into the evening with our downtown heritage block party. Both the site and the downtown continue on to Saturday, September 30th. Admission is free and there's door prizes available.
Activities will be available at all of the sites. Come out on your professional activity day this Friday and visit our cultural institutions. The goal of Culture Days is to create, participate, and share. Let's celebrate our culture. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a proclamation here for you. Whereas culture constitutes one of the main identity factors of the city of Sault Ste. Marie, of the District of Algoma, and of the quality of life of its citizens. And whereas culture is an intrinsic component both of an individual and societal development, and culture arises and flourishes first locally. And whereas the city of Sault Ste. Marie of the District of Algoma has already shown its intention to implement projects that affirm both its cultural identity and the active participation of its citizens to the life of the municipality. Whereas the cultural community has set up a national event, Culture Days, that will consolidate a number of cultural events under a common theme across Canada by promoting the widest possible access to the arts, heritage, and culture. And whereas Culture Days Sault Ste. Marie will allow citizens to celebrate, create, and participate in cultural activities. Now therefore, I, Christian Provenzano, Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, do hereby proclaim September 29th and 30th, 2017 as Culture Days in the City of Sault Ste. Marie. Thank you. I think Councillor Myers has a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Kathy and Laurie. It's always great to see you girls here because it means that we're in for some exciting celebrations, and that's what it is now. I just want to draw the public's attention to the city website, that if people are looking for more information, they can go on to the Canada 150 link, and it's under there. And they can also get to a link about to both the art gallery, certainly the Ermatinger-Clergue National Historic Site. So just come on down, everybody. Enjoy this time to celebrate our culture. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And thank you both very much for the work you do on behalf of the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Under agenda item 5.2, Tai Chi Arts Week. Bob Connell, location leader, Sault Ste. Marie Branch, Taoist Tai Chi Society, is in attendance.
Welcome to council, Mr. Connell.
Thank you. I don't know if anyone knows the Taoist Tai Chi Society. If some of you have been to our club and understand what we do, we're mainly a volunteer organization. We're in over 25 countries worldwide with somewhere close to 50,000 members. Everything we do is done with volunteers. And we've been in the Sioux since 1986. Many places all over town until we finally got to our place that we're in now, which is a beautiful, it was a church, now it's a church with red doors. It's been renovated and it's a very beautiful place to practice. We are looking to celebrate the United Nations Day of the Older Person, which is coming up October 1st. And as part of that celebration, we will be having several demonstrations around town and some small free lessons. The first one's going to be right outside the doors of this building. We've got permission for Wednesday between 11:30 and 1:30. Will be some people out there doing some demonstrations, and anyone will be free to have a free lesson if we're around and you're close by. And you can't understand what Tai Chi does unless you do it. Looking at it from the outside, it's not really a performance art. It's something that comes from the inside that changes you. We're also going to be taking part in the aforementioned cultural days at the second part at the multicultural picnic, I suppose it's called, at the Clergue Park. This leads right along with our mandate because one of our main tenets is all cultures moving together in harmony. And so we love to join with all kinds of things that are multicultural. Our main organizational goals are to make Taoist Tai Chi health arts available to everyone, and to promote the health improving qualities of Taoist Tai Chi, and to promote cultural exchange, and to help others. That's basically all we're doing. So if you're out and about and you have a chance to be at some of the demos, please take part. And if not, come by our club. If you see cars outside, we'll be there. There's always some tea, and
Maybe you want to just give everybody the address of the club?
it's 120 Cunningham Road. Pardon me. I'm sorry, we handed out cards to the council members, but
We have the cards, but
the
everybody at
public
home
does
watching
not.
you wouldn't have those.
Exactly. Okay.
And it's got the red doors.
Yes, it does.
So I have a proclamation here for you. Whereas October 1st, 2017 is the United Nations International Day of the Older Person, and whereas Tai Chi practice is known to prevent falls, whereas the Taoist Tai Chi practice contributes to better balance and posture, increased strength and flexibility, and improved circulation, and whereas Taoist Tai Chi promotes calmness and peace of mind, and whereas many health practitioners encourage the practice of Tai Chi. Now therefore, I, Christian Provenzano, as Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, do hereby proclaim the week of September 25th to October 1st, 2017 as Feng Loi Kok Taoist Tai Chi Arts Week, in recognition of the United States International Day of the Older Person. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Under agenda item 5.3, Refugee 705's Global Friends Program. Simone Mitchell, Project Coordinator, is in attendance.
Welcome to Council, Ms. Mitchell. Maybe you can introduce everybody that's here with you.
Do you want to introduce yourself, actually? Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Dania Kisberry.
I'm Heather Lewis.
Jenna Moro.
Hello, bear with me, I have a little bit of a cold, so trying to pay more attention to the message than the sound of my voice, please. I'd really appreciate it. Good evening, and thank you, Mayor and Council, for giving us this opportunity today to talk about our program. As many of you know, we're in the midst of a global refugee crisis. It's become a reality that we can't ignore. In 2014, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees estimated that there were 50 million displaced people around the world, and this number has continued to grow. The ongoing civil war in Syria has turned the global focus to the plight of refugees everywhere and the need for resettlement in safe countries. In response, our government pledged to bring in 25,000 refugees, with 150 families currently residing in Sault Ste. Marie. They came to a place of refuge, a place of new starts and beginnings, Canada, known around the world as a symbol of diversity, acceptance, and openness. We have an international reputation for being kind, and we talked about some of actually those things earlier in Sault Ste. Marie. And it's a reputation that we're very proud of. But this is not always the case. Our news feeds and social media, often the main news source for our youth, are riddled with misconceptions surrounding immigration and the refugee crisis, not to mention some of the occurrences of xenophobia and racism our newcomers have faced on our streets. When I hear these things, I know that Sault Ste. Marie is better than that. I wholeheartedly believe that we have the capacity to support and stand by our newcomers, just as they will support and stand by us as they become essential members of our social fabric. Our neighbors, our colleagues, and our friends. Our city's youth will be the leaders and catalysts for this change. They're the future bearers of our Canadian values. We believe that tolerance starts with children, and Refugee 705 wants to be there to support them in this journey. In partnership with the Sioux Career Centre, we recently received funding from the Ontario Trillium Foundation's Youth Opportunities Fund to create our Global Friends program. Over the next 24 months, Global Friends will connect Canadian-born, Indigenous, and refugee youth through monthly activities and field trips during school breaks, as well as providing local youth with an opportunity to build close relationships with other young people and become more engaged in their community. It will allow refugee youth to develop their language skills and learn more about Canadian and Anishinaabe culture in a fun, relaxed way. All events are free for participants. Transportation, snacks, and entrance fees are totally provided. We understand that adjusting to a new country, language, culture, and school is very difficult for refugee youth. At the same time, Canadian-born youth in small communities such as Sault Ste. Marie, far from larger, diverse urban centres, may be unaccustomed to the arrival and settlement of immigrants. We hope to widen their understanding of what community means by raising awareness of the growing diversity within our city and why diversity is a thing to be celebrated and embraced. We are currently looking for youth participants between 12 and 18 years of age, a team of passionate volunteers, and venues willing to host our program. If you'd like to be involved or would like to learn more, you can find us online at www.refugee705.com. We have a link to volunteer applications on our website if you're interested. I encourage you to follow us on Facebook and Instagram to stay current with our events. Many of our events will be open to members of the community, so even if you're not directly involved in our program, if you'd like to attend or participate, you're more than welcome. In launching our program, we'd also like to express our gratitude for the support and enthusiasm we received so far, for the connections we've made with other like-minded groups, and partnering with individuals who share our vision, and also for Mayor Provenzano for obviously supporting our program and welcoming us here. We've been really overwhelmed by the support we've received. The United Nations recently published an article that stated, through friendship, by accumulating bonds of camaraderie and developing strong ties of trust, we can contribute to the fundamental shifts that are urgently needed to achieve lasting stability, leave a safety net that will protect us all, and generate passion for a better world where we're all united for the greater good. We believe this statement to be true and invite you to join us as we build and cultivate these bonds as we strive towards a more welcoming and united community. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a proclamation to support your efforts. Whereas Global Friends is a project which will facilitate activities that promote strong, healthy, and cross-cultural relationships and will strive to make our community a more welcoming place for newcomers. And whereas youth will participate in bi-weekly activities meant to improve their language skills, teach them about public services, and connect them to volunteering opportunities. And whereas refugee and immigrant youth are frequently marginalized and underrepresented, this program will empower them to be change makers in their communities by providing opportunities for leadership and civic engagement. And whereas the need persists for refugee youth to become more involved in the community and make lasting friendships, Global Friends will pair immigrant students with Canadian-born peers, fostering new friendships, promoting academic skill development, and appreciation of cultural diversity. And whereas the Global Friends Project will address social and linguistic barriers to refugee and newcomer youth by engaging youth and community stakeholders to plan and carry out community-based mentoring and intercultural activities. Now, therefore, I, Christian Provenzano, Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, do hereby proclaim September 25th, 2017 as Global Friends Day in the City of Sault Ste. Marie. And I thank you very much for your work. It is important. Thank you for it.
Thank you.
Under Agenda 5.4, Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month, Miranda Harrison, Pregnancy and Infant Loss Network Peer-Led Support Group Facilitator and Event Coordinator, and Jennifer Alick, Network Support Group Facilitator, are in attendance.
Welcome to Council, ladies.
Thank you, Mayor Provenzano and Council. On average, the City of Sault Ste. Marie has been welcoming 950 newborn babies each and every year. Our community is a great place to raise a family. We have pure beauty surrounding our landscape and the kind and loving people that choose to live here. However, sometimes the joy of welcoming a new baby into the world can turn into a great tragedy. We experience between 20 and 30 infant deaths each year. This includes, but is not limited to, a miscarriage, stillbirth, SIDS, or the death of a newborn. The pain of losing a child is unimaginable.
So in recognition of October's Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month, we will also be lighting the Algoma Water Tower in pink and blue on October 1st at dusk, as well as hosting the second annual Pregnancy and Infant Loss Remembrance Day at Sault College on Sunday, October 15th at 6:30 p.m. This day has become globally recognized as a day to remember those babies who have gone too soon. Prior to this year, our community had limited resources for families going through a loss. However, through strong will, devotion, and community support, we are proud to offer a monthly peer-led support group through the Pregnancy and Infant Loss Network with Sunnybrook Hospital. It is the hope that this annual event and monthly support group will continue the conversation locally, as well as bring together individuals, families, and friends to help ease some of the pain, but to also offer a time to remember our babies without judgment. The evening is open to everyone and will include personal stories, a candlelight vigil at 7 p.m. as part of the Global Wave of Light ceremony, information about our PALE Network support group, and also offer free refreshments. Thank you.
I have your proclamation. Whereas pregnancy and infant loss is a tragedy that affects 1 in 4 women in Ontario as well as their partners and families. Whereas the censorship that surrounds these losses impedes healing for those affected. And whereas awareness and sharing regarding these losses, especially within one's own community, helps healing to take place. Whereas a day of remembrance honors the lives of the children and supports grieving parents, families, and friends whose lives are forever altered by the heartbreak of losing a child. And whereas the month of October is recognized in parts of Canada and many other jurisdictions around the world as a month of remembrance and awareness of pregnancy and infant loss. Now therefore, I, Christian Provenzano, as Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2017 as Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. Thank you. Thank you for the support, ladies, that you're providing for those in your community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Under Agenda 5.5, Fire Prevention Week. Aaron Gravel, Public Education Officer, Fire Services, is in attendance.
Welcome to Council, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of Council, ladies and gentlemen, as a representative of Sault Ste. Marie Fire Service, I come before you today to have Fire Prevention Week proclaimed once again. The Fire Prevention Week theme for 2017 is Every Second Counts, Plan 2 Ways Out. As the Ontario Fire Service recommends residents plan and practice how to escape their homes in preparation for an untimely event of a fire emergency. Most fatal fires happen at night between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m., when most people are asleep. Working smoke alarms can alert people to fire before it spreads, providing additional time to escape safely. The Sault Ste. Marie Fire Service has been working diligently to prevent these disappointing occurrences. However, we can't succeed without the citizens of our great city heeding our message and putting into action the proven recommendations routinely conveyed to the public. Fire prevention personnel will be on hand at numerous locations during Fire Prevention Week, speaking with the public and reminding them of the things they can do to reduce the likelihood of a fire occurring. At the same time, we'll be running a pizza box campaign for the week with a local community partner, Aurora's Pizza, which includes a contest and prizes. If you follow our social media as well as theirs, you'll be able to get contest details. As well, we have been provided with the honor of hosting a Greyhound game on Wednesday, October 11th, 2017, to once again promote the fire prevention message that can easily make a difference in the level of safety for our families. This year's Fire Prevention Week campaign encourages families to create a home escape plan, which includes every member of the household, practice the escape plan at least twice a year, have smoke alarms installed on every level of their home, as well as test alarms at least monthly by pushing the test button to ensure they are alerted on when to escape. Our hope is that by providing an opportunity for people to reinforce basic fire safety principles and learn more about fire safety in a fun and enjoyable environment, future fire tragedies can be avoided within our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gravel. I have a proclamation here. Sault Ste. Marie Fire Service is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living in and visiting our city. And fire is a serious public safety concern both locally and provincially. And our homes are the locations where people are at greatest risk from fire. And whereas many fires that occur in the home result in major property damage, significant personal losses, and in most cases the smoke alarm was not operational. And whereas the Sault Ste. Marie Fire Services believes that all residential fires are predictable and preventable, and our fire service personnel are dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and home fire injuries through prevention and protection education. And whereas Sault Ste. Marie residents are responsive to public education measures and are able to take personal steps to increase their safety from fires, especially in their homes, and residents should prepare an escape plan with their families and ensure they have working smoke alarms on all levels of their home. And whereas the 2017 Fire Prevention Week theme is Every Second Counts, Plan 2 Ways Out, this year's theme effectively serves to educate the public about the vital importance of developing a home fire escape plan with all members of the household and practicing it twice a year. Now therefore, I, Christian Provenzano, as Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, do hereby proclaim the week of October 8th to October 14th, 2017 as Fire Prevention Week, and urge all residents to develop a home fire escape plan with all members of the household and to practice it twice a year, and to support the many public safety activities and efforts of Sault Ste. Marie Fire Services during Fire Prevention Week 2017. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Under Agenda 5.6, Girls Hockey Weekend. Alyssa Plastino, President, Female Hockey Association, is in attendance.
Welcome to Council, Ms. Plastino. I see that you've got some young hockey players here, I would suspect.
We do.
Is that the case?
We do.
Yeah, that's great.
With me, we have parents, coaches, and some of our players, of course.
Good.
Women's hockey is the fastest growing sport in Canada. The first documented women's hockey game was in Barrie in 1892, 2 years before the first Stanley Cup was awarded. The first Ontario Provincial Championship was held in 1914. And in 1990, Canada won the first ever World Championship for women's hockey. Since then, registration in the sport has grown exponentially. Only 2 years ago, I really knew nothing about girls hockey. At the age of 7, my oldest daughter joined a Girls Learn to Play program in St. Louis, Missouri, where we lived. It was okay, but I really started learning about girls hockey later that year, in mid-2015, when my husband and I moved home to the Soo after 15 years. Now with a family, including a young daughter with a new love for hockey, a simple Google search led me to Soo Female Hockey Association. Joining Soo Female has ignited a passion in our family for the sport, a passion that I see in families throughout our organization. Girls hockey is special. It gives female athletes the opportunity to play and excel at a sport traditionally dominated by boys, in a supportive environment that celebrates them being girls. Since May, the executive of Soo Female Hockey Association have been working tirelessly to ensure that the 2017-2018 hockey season is the best one yet, and that we can use it as the building block for further development of girls hockey in Sault Ste. Marie. In our volunteer roles with Soo Female, we've quickly discovered that no longer are we simply responsible for just our own children, but we also feel a deep responsibility for the other 300 girls who play in our league. Some of these girls are going through things in their lives that we lose sleep over, but hockey is their happy place. The rink is where their troubles disappear. With that in mind, in the words of Craig Hartsburg, our job is to make sure players leave the ice after a practice or a game with a big smile on their face, rosy red cheeks, and a sweaty head. That means they worked hard, gotten better, and had fun. Our league develops girls so that they can compete for college scholarships to play hockey, continuing to pursue their love of the game while also pursuing higher education. We are also a feeder association for the successful local women's hockey league that has a registration of just under 400 women ages 21 to 70. This afternoon, we stand before you to kick off our celebration of girls hockey. In October, the International Ice Hockey Federation and Hockey Canada will team up to host the 7th annual World Girls Hockey Weekend. This event aims to celebrate and grow girls hockey from coast to coast and unite Canadians through grassroots programming led by local communities. Here in the Soo, our organization will host a free hockey clinic for girls on October 6th, led by Brienne Viel, a former player with our organization who has established her own local girls hockey training school, Northern Elite Female Hockey Academy. Through her academy, Brienne works with many of our teams and coaches. She's a role model for our young girls, and she's also here with us today. Then on October 15th, a partnership with the Soo Greyhounds will have girls hockey being celebrated during their Sunday afternoon home game. Our girls will be on the ice as the 7th skater, awarding the 3 stars, and our young tyke age players will entertain the crowd with a mini game during intermission. We'll actually also have one of our players singing the national anthem. Throughout the Soo Greyhound season, you'll also see our Soo Female volunteers out and about during home games as we raise funds through 50-50 draws and our jersey raffles. In closing, let me express our appreciation to the city employees we work with on a regular basis. Not only the rink attendants at arenas across the city, but employees like Amanda Girardi, who does all she can to fulfill our requests for ice, which isn't always easy, and Nancy Novello, who patiently walks us through the lottery licensing process.
No kidding.
It's been a long 2 weeks of lottery licensing these recently. And to you, Mr. Mayor, and members of council, on behalf of Sioux Female Hockey Association, thank you for joining us in our celebration of girls hockey.
Thank you. Before I get to the proclamation, I just want to say that I'm glad that you and your husband are back in Sault Ste. Marie with your family. And we certainly appreciate the volunteer work to support this organization and the rest of the parents that obviously put in a lot of time and effort to support Wildcats hockey. Whereas Sault Ste. Marie has a reputation from coast to coast as being one of the most passionate hockey towns in the country and is deeply rooted in the love of the game. And whereas female hockey is the fastest growing sport in Canada. And whereas Sault Ste. Marie has a vibrant, active girls hockey community led by passionate volunteers, supported by dedicated parents, and enriched by the talents of female hockey players ages 4 to 18. And whereas Sioux Female Hockey Association will proudly celebrate girls hockey with communities across Canada and throughout the world as part of the International Ice Hockey Federation and Hockey Canada's World Girls Hockey Weekend. Now therefore I, Christian Provenzano, Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, do hereby proclaim the month of October 6th to October 8th, the weekend of October 6th to October 8th, 2017, as Girls Hockey Weekend. Thank you very much.
Under Agenda 5.7, Unity and Diversity, Chris Faulkner and Roya Mogarabi are in attendance.
Welcome to Council, Mr. Faulkner. This is Mogarabi. Welcome.
Okay. To our Mayor and City Council members, my name is Chris Faulkner, and with me is Roya Moharabi. And I'd like to mention Roya and her husband, Dr. Moharabi, Maran Moharabi, came here in Canada in 1979 for a training institute. Because of the persecutions of the Baha'is in Iran, they were unable to return to Iran. Unfortunate for Iran, but great for us. We have two great community members here in our community in Sault Ste. Marie and serving the community of Sault Ste. Marie. We are members of the Baha'i community of Sault Ste. Marie, and we are here today to inform you about a special event that we will be celebrating here in Sault Ste. Marie. Across Canada, Baha'is this year are celebrating a significant anniversary in the history of the Baha'i faith, at the same time as the country is commemorating 150 years since Confederation. It is the bicentenary of the birth of Baha'u'llah, the prophet founder of the Baha'i faith, born in 1817 in Tehran. Some 6 million Baha'is around the world today revere Baha'u'llah as the most recent of history's messengers of God, whose purpose has been to guide humanity towards the advancement of human civilization. Baha'u'llah's teachings revolve around the oneness of humanity, and his revelation signals a special time in history as the entire human race moves to a new stage in its collective maturity and wholeness. The challenges and tribulations of this transitional phase in the story of humanity resembles the changes encountered as a person passes through adolescence and becomes an adult. Baha'is understand the world to be on the threshold of an age in which education for all, equality of women and men, a just and equitable system of government on the earth, and upholding science and religion will be among the values and achievements of prosperity and peaceful world society. Baha'is are eagerly anticipating the 200th anniversary of the birth of Baha'u'llah on Sunday, October 22nd. This historical occasion is immediately preceded by the birth of the Bab, the prophet herald of the Baha'i faith, on October 21st. These successive days are called the Twin Holy Days by Baha'is. Despite the continued persecution of Baha'is in the land of its birth, Iran, the Baha'i community has grown and spread throughout the world since Baha'u'llah's passing in 1892. Baha'is now live in over 200 countries and are residing in some 100,000 locations. In Canada, Baha'is can be found in every province and territory, reside in more than 1,000 communities and from all walks of life and cultural backgrounds, and from among the Indigenous peoples and the multi-generational Canadians, and to more recent immigrants and refugees. The Baha'is of Sault Ste. Marie and the surrounding areas are very excited about the fact that we will be holding our bicentenary celebration at the Ermatinger Clergue National Historic Site. The Ermatinger Old Stone House, as an historic site, depicts the same period in Canada that Baha'u'llah's birth and life took place. It is also interesting to note that Francis Hector Clergue visited and worked in the city of Baha'u'llah's birth, Tehran, Persia, before coming to Sault Ste. Marie. All joy to this night, through which all days have been suffused with light, is one of the descriptions the birth of Baha'u'llah from the Baha'i sacred writings, a sentiment that reflects just how cherished a holy day this is for Baha'is. Thank you, Mayor Christian Provenzano and City Council members, for allowing us the opportunity to come before you to inform you about this special event for the Baha'is of Canada and the world.
Thank you. Your proclamation reads, whereas October 21st and 22nd, 2017 marks the 200th anniversary of the birth of Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i faith. Whereas Baha'u'llah called for fellowship and collaboration among the followers of all religions, while religious hatred and fanaticism continue to fuel violence, terrorism. Whereas Baha'u'llah affirmed the equality of women and men, while the oppression of women still holds back the progress of many societies. Whereas Baha'u'llah urged the leaders of the world to abandon their nationalistic rivalries and create a system of collective security, while their failure to do so has caused world wars, multiple conflicts, and a massive global arms trade. And whereas the wide gap between these ideals and the state of the world calls for people of all faiths to rise above partisanship and work together for human understanding and peace. Now, therefore, I, Christian Provenzano, as Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, do hereby recognize the significance of the bicentenary and urge all citizens to work for the realization of the principles of peace, justice, and human solidarity promoted by Baha'u'llah. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, agenda item delegation 5.8 concerns item 7.2.1 on the regular agenda, remote control car club facility agreement. On the agenda is a report of the manager of recreation and culture attached for your consideration, with the following motion by councillors Shoemaker and Turco. Resolved that the report of the manager of recreation and culture concerning the Sault Ste. Marie Remote Control Car Club's facility lease request be received, and that staff be authorized to enter into a short-term agreement not to exceed 2 years with the Sault Ste. Marie Remote Control Car Club in reference to the new remote control outdoor facility to be located within the tennis courts at Wilcox Park. We have 2 delegations that will be before you. The first delegation will be Marty Sharon, President, Sault Ste. Marie Remote Control Car Club. Following that delegation, there'll be a delegation of Vera Began and Wendy Olar, concerned residents.
So, yes, Mr. Councilor Turco.
My name is secretary for the resolution, please.
Understood. So we'll have Councillor Turco's name removed and Councillor Grandinetta's name added. So Council, we're going to hear the delegations, and we'll hear all the delegations, and once we've heard the delegations, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions of staff on their staff report, and then we'll proceed to deal with the matter. So we'd welcome Mr. Sharon, President of the Sault Ste. Marie Remote Control Car Club, up to the microphone. Welcome to Council, Mr. Sharon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Councilors. Not much of a public speaker, so I'll try to do my best to sum up what it is we do with remote control cars. It sounds pretty simple and fun, that's because it is. Throughout the years, I've been doing this for around 10 years now. I've had the ability to meet a lot of really nice people, families, and I've made a lot of friends. Something I never expected when I picked up an RC car the first time, and never thought I'd actually be standing here talking about leasing a facility within the city. This is a pretty neat opportunity for us, so I'm rather excited. In the last 10 years, we've been involved in plenty of events regarding in and around the city, and we find ourselves there just because of the good nature of the people that enjoy this hobby. And the more and more I do it, the more we meet and the more that come on board. We've been involved with Rotary for 7 years. We've helped raise money with them, and also for our club, a really neat joint effort, and got ourselves out into the community, and ultimately ended up with more members. And it's something that we really realized that this is something that's pretty fun, people enjoy doing, and I don't think it's going anywhere. We've also been involved with like Tenaris Family Day in connection with Rotary, SR Family Days, and then most importantly, I find it's our very own events that we end up putting on through the years. And as we go, we find ourselves continually struggling for a home. It's a lot of fun, but we do require a fair amount of space, and there's a lot of work and detail that goes into setting up and tearing down, especially a large RC track, sometimes 6,000 square feet. Something that's really come about through all this hard work of finding new homes and finding new facilities and building new facilities is we've taught a lot of people a lot of things, including myself. And as we're building these things and tearing them down and moving them and so on, we've taught a lot of kids how to use tools and working together. We often move as one good unit. And as we start building these tracks in various locations, Alexander Henry, for example, which is not available to us anymore, every time we would do it, we get faster and faster. People would get better and better, and you'd almost work as one unit. And then this started flowing into the racing program, where you see the kids interacting more. They're interacting outside of the racing programs, outside of the practice programs. Some of them now mechanics, the racing in Laird, racing across country. Some of them are actually traveling the country racing remote control cars. Believe it or not, it's actually that large. So it's pretty neat to see something that we started out just goofing off, come to the point where now we're standing in front of the city council asking us, or asking you, for a permanent home for our club members to be able to open door and leave and not have to continually set up and tear down. This will help us grow into a bigger part of the community. And I know that with the members that we do have and the type of members that we attract in this really interesting sport, and it is a sport, we're going to become part of this community that we're involved in. And we very much welcome them to become part of us, and that's something that we're looking forward to, revitalizing a part of the community that may not be used as much as it had in the past, and bringing a new life to an older park. So other than that, I'm willing to answer questions, and I think that'd be the easiest way.
Yeah, I think we appreciate that. I think what we're going to do is we're going to hear the delegations and any councillors. When we get to questions, if they have questions of you, we'll call you back up.
Sounds great.
Thank you. So we would like to invite Ms. Vera Began to give her an opportunity to make her representations. Welcome to council, Ms. Began.
Thank you.
Are you Ms. Olar?
I am.
Okay. Welcome to council, Ms. Olar. So go ahead, Ms. Began.
All right, this is my first time here. So good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, as well as members of council. I'm happy to have the opportunity to speak with you today. The majority of the residents in this neighborhood do not agree with the Sault RC Car Club proposal, as proven by the 160 residents in the near vicinity of the park who signed a petition in opposition. We feel that this location has not been carefully planned or considered. With no indoor facility, the racetrack will be open to the elements. Considerable upgrades would also be needed. This park has no electricity, no washrooms, and no plumbing. Where will the necessary resources come from, and who will do the work? We have been advised of another tennis court only 700 meters away that already has these amenities. This proposal was originally presented without the neighborhood's input. This change of use will automatically change the park from a passive park to an events park. Once these changes get made, how will it be possible to change it back to its original use? They have asked for dawn till dusk operation. Will this be compatible in this neighborhood? During events with many cars racing and even more spectators, it will not be quiet. How will this impact the residents, and how will this impact other users of the park? How will the club grow at this location without taking away more public space? It was already determined that if additional parking is needed, they could use another area of the park. That area is used by young families who come here to use the playground. no further details of how they plan to grow have been made. The Thunder Bay RC Car Club runs in the park, but it is not located inside a residential neighborhood, and the racetrack has remained a free and always open space to be enjoyed by everyone. The Sioux RC Car Club has a place in our city, but it does not belong in Wilcox Park. Wilcox Park is a neighborhood park that is open for everyone. This proposal would take away from that openness. This change would bring an element of exclusiveness that is not currently there. The fence around the tennis court would be gated and locked. Will security cameras also be installed? It was determined that the tennis courts are little used and poorly maintained. Those reasons were given to validate the proposal, but they place our neighborhood at a disadvantage. Who is responsible for maintaining them, and when was this determined? In fact, the fencing around the courts has recently been replaced. Why would the fence be a priority if the courts are in poor condition? This neighborhood was given the message that if we aren't using it, someone else should. When we said that we are using it, then the message was that we are not using it appropriately because this is not for tennis. It would appear, however, that car racing inside a tennis court would be appropriate. Why is our neighborhood being held to a different standard? Many other neighborhood parks also appear to be little used. Is this the policy for all neighborhood parks? Before this proposal became public, no one was aware that the idea of repurposing the tennis courts was even being considered. No one in the neighborhood was ever consulted about how they should be repurposed or what we would like. Have any other options been considered or explored? Since a proposal has already been put forth to repurpose them, would the city consider our proposal, which is to continue to maintain the courts and install basketball hoops, and if possible, also hockey nets? Many kids play basketball and hockey in the streets where it is not safe. Everyone who signed the petition would like to see the courts remain a free and open space, and that is why we ask that you vote no on the RC Car Club proposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. This may sound a little bit repetitive after Vera's speech, but I wasn't quite sure exactly what she was going to speak on. And I spent a lot of time putting my thoughts together, so I hope you hear me out. I'm a little more long-winded, though, unfortunately. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Wendy Olar. My husband and I live on the corner of Party and Maple, 70 feet directly across the street from Wilcox Tennis Courts. That is approximately straight across over to Mayor Provenzano, maybe a little bit further.
Well, I think we're more than 70 feet apart.
Well,
Less than 70 feet apart.
maybe to that wall. It's pretty close anyways. We are longtime residents, as are many of our neighbors. I come before you to ask you to vote no to the RC Car Club's proposal to lease the Wilcox Park tennis courts for their exclusive use. Although it is true that this particular summer the tennis courts were used less often for tennis, they were, however, used by neighborhood families quite regularly for other activities, as proven in the photos that you received via email. It seems that the Parks and Rec Committee has gone to great lengths to promote the idea that the tennis courts are not maintained and that they are seldom used. I can assure you that this is partly due to the fact that the cracks in the pavement were not sealed in the spring as they usually are. The weeds grew knee-deep, particularly on the Maple Street side of the courts, as shown in the emailed photos, thus making the tennis surface unplayable this year. This, however, did not deter local families from using this paved space as they have done for decades. Aside from tennis, these activities include learning to ride bikes, rollerblading, wagons and scooters, basketball, playing catch, relaxing with pets, and just meeting up with friends. On September 19th, a crew of 2 from the Board of Works Parks Department were sent to whippersnip and blow the weeds from the courts. That was September 19th. I went over to inquire as to why they were clearing them now and why they hadn't been cleared all summer. The employee indicated that they are on a 9-day cycle with regards to park maintenance. I assured him that this was not the case here and that there was only one other occasion that the weeds were done, and it was at my specific request when I had gone over and asked them to go into the park and take the weeds down. I contacted the Board of Works regarding this matter, and the employee indicated that they had fallen behind this summer, which we all know. We all had extra long grass this summer and more cutting to do because of all the rain. When asked why we hadn't sealed the cracks in the spring, as they had done every other year, he said that they would be sealing the pavement this fall at the end of tennis season. It's typically done in the springtime so that they can play tennis. I hope that when council votes on this proposal, that the following facts and questions will be considered. Firstly, a petition was signed by approximately 160 residents in the immediate vicinity of the tennis courts, and I believe that council members all got a copy of that petition, all signed in opposition of the RC Car Club leasing the space. Residents signed stating that they wanted the courts to remain for the use of the public, not a private club. Several were in agreement to seeing the paved space be repurposed for the neighborhood, with many wishing to see basketball nets installed. Secondly, it was suggested by club members at the public open house held on May 30th at the Tech that the residents of Wilcox Park area should go elsewhere to play tennis and that the kids can ride their bikes on the Hub Trail. Why should we, who live in the area of Wilcox Park, be expected to go elsewhere and a small group from elsewhere come here for their own entertainment? This is the reason we live near a park, public access to a recreational space that is in our own neighborhood. Why would a public space be leased to a private club? It is important that the public be aware that the plan is for this to be a gated, locked space for club use. Thirdly, the RC Car Club is primarily an adult club, as seen in many of their photos on their Facebook page. The club is suggesting that they will be encouraging neighborhood children to come out and participate in activities. Will the club require these children to pay membership dues to actively participate, and will they have to come with their own cars? It was mentioned that the cars range in price from $100 to $2,000. This would not be affordable for many families in this area. Will there be a separate space for neighborhood kids to participate with borrowed cars? And if they are their guests, will they be covered under the club's liability insurance? If the club currently has an approximate membership of 30 and their hope is to grow their membership, where exactly are these members going to be allowed to park in relation to the courts? Maple Street is an extremely busy street, and as neighbors expressed through letters to the committee and also at the meeting at the Tech, we are concerned about the safety of the children playing in the park and about the residents trying to pull out of their driveways. There was some suggestion by the committee that perhaps the club could park on the green space on Spruce Street side of the courts or the baseball diamond. Does this mean that we will possibly lose more space from our park? And is the city leasing this space as well to them? Will the city be paying for the cost of the gate that the club plans on installing on the courts? Also, I noticed on the Car Club's Facebook page that they regularly use a PA system for announcing. Does this mean that the neighbors would be exposed to excessive noise while we are trying to enjoy our own outdoor space or while we are in our own homes with our windows open? The club has mentioned that they are keen on hosting events. I would expect that it will be necessary to use a PA system. I know that the Car Club has indicated that they will not be using gas-powered engines, but would this not be a must if the club was hosting out-of-town events? If the noise is excessive, where does that leave us as residents living next to the courts? Do we contact you, the councillors, to police the events that may get out of hand with regard to noise? Where and how would the club get power? Is the city taking on responsibility for installing electricity to the courts? If there is power to the tennis courts, does this mean that the club can use the courts after dark? Would the club's liability insurance cover accidents caused on or around the space being leased? Who would be responsible for the garbage around the outside of the courts if the club attracts spectators? Does the club plan on storing a trailer or shed on site? There was some mention of a trailer being stored with equipment. What does the club plan on doing regarding facilities? Will the residents be forced to look out at porta potties while sitting in our own backyards? Have council members, committee members, or neighbors of Wilcox Park personally been invited by the RC Car Club to any recent events? If you are trying to win the hearts of all involved, would this not have been an opportunity? Could a race event be held at Wilcox Park with the use of a PA system prior to council voting on this lease agreement? I feel it is essential that council members and the public be aware of the impact this club could have on our neighborhood prior to them signing a 2-year lease with the club. In conclusion, on behalf of myself, my husband, my children, and approximately the 160 neighbors who signed the petition and reside in the Wilcox Park area, we wish to make it clear that we strongly oppose this proposal. Instead, we wish that you take into consideration the specific needs of our neighborhood, as was done in several other parks in the city. Why is the Parks Committee so intent on meeting the needs of this private club by offering up what is currently a public space and turning it into a locked space that is exclusive? We feel that the impact this club will have on neighbors regarding noise and traffic has not been considered. This is a proposal to put a racetrack in a quiet residential area. Yes, not in my backyard, we say, but also not in your backyard. Wilcox Park is a small residential park space for the public to enjoy. It is not a suitable space for events to be held, nor a racetrack to be installed. Please vote no to this proposal, but continue to assist this club with their endeavor to secure a location more suitable so that their club may grow and our city may enjoy the sport of RC car racing. Thank you.
Thank you for those submissions. Okay, so we'll take questions from council now. I have Councillor Hollingsworth down first, but Councillor Hollingsworth, I'm just going to start with the ward councillors here. So we're going to go with Councillor Turco, Councillor Nero, then Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate it. We were at the, Councillor Nero and I were at the May 30th. Seems so long ago. My question is to, first of all, a couple, if you'll permit me, Mr. Mayor, short and sweet, to Virginia, McLeod, Virginia. That meeting was a long time ago. So this won't start till when, if this goes through today?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Turco. If this were to be passed by council today, they would look at starting in the spring of 2018, as soon as the snow clears.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, another follow-up for Ms. McLeod. Where did this start, this idea? Was it the idea of the car club, or was it city staff?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Turco. The city is often approached by different groups in our community looking for us to assist them in helping facilitate their sport or their activity. The RC Car Club did approach our department, and we did an assessment of trying to see what their needs were, so getting that understanding, a better understanding of what's happening in other communities. And from there, we looked at spaces that would meet their needs. So things that we looked at were they needed a fenced-in area. Ideally, it would have a pavement or a hard surface, highly visible, access to a bus route, central location. And from there, we looked at what spaces we might have that could meet those needs, which ones that we felt were underutilized, and how we could better use those spaces.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Was this the only possible place through the entire city that was considered?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Turco, there were a couple other options. Originally, we had thought possibly there was a space at Tom Tipton. However, the area and the footprint were much too small to facilitate this. Another location was the tennis courts at McMeekin. However, with the move of the seniors to the Northern Community Centre, we're looking at being able to start pickleball and tennis programs there. So those are going to be much more utilized as we get into full programming through the seniors.
A couple of quick questions here before I finish. The tennis court, will this be used only for the car club?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Turco, yes, because when we enter into agreements, whether it's with a community garden or different spaces, because they provide the city with an insurance certificate for that space, because that's what we require, it would be set aside so that that covers off under their insurance.
And one more, Mr. Mayor, thank you for your indulgence. I got to tell you, Virginia, you and I go way back. If it wasn't for Wendy Olar, I would have never known about this, about the, not that I need to know everything, but I think an item like this, I think it would have been, prudent that the councillors. I don't know if Mr. Neer knew about it, but I certainly didn't know if it wasn't for Mr. Olar who called me. How was that done, the process?
Through you,
Get
Mr.
to
Mayor,
meeting.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Turco. When these groups come to city staff, we bring back, or we start to do our research to get all the information. It's then brought to our Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. So that, at that time, we brought it to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee with some background information to share with them. They passed a resolution at their PRAC meeting asking staff to kind of move forward. So from that point, we then look at doing an open house. So that as part of the process, we need to ensure that we do our public engagement. And the open house was the public engagement process so that we could get concerns, feedback, and information from there. And at that point, it was sent out to City Council. Any residents living in within 400 meters of the park were sent an actual direct invite to attend the public notice, as well as it was posted in the paper through a press release. So that's how we advertised it to the community and council. We did have 37 members attend the public open house. And then from there were a number of questions that did come out. We needed to do some additional research before we came back to council.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Turco. Councillor Nero.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a number of questions, and my questions are going to be more on an approach that if council's wish is to approve this, I think we need to have some things in place, and that's my questions will be geared towards that. So, Ms. McLeod, on the noise factor, on hours of operation, would we be able to get something that has the activity gone from the tennis courts by 9 o'clock?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Nero. Absolutely, because we do have an agreement that we're going to be preparing with them, so we can indicate in the agreement that the hours of operation are from, this early in the morning or whatever time in the morning till a certain cutoff time in the evening. So that can be presented. Originally, we were thinking around 9:30, which is well before the noise bylaw kicks in. But yeah, that's all part of the agreement.
Yeah, and when I say 9 o'clock, I'm referring to remote car activity on the court itself to be done by 8:30, and that leaves half an hour for people to mingle, because usually that's what happens when an activity finishes. People don't just get in their cars and leave. So if the court activity finishes at 8:30, I think everybody would be gone by 9 o'clock. So if we could address that in the agreement. And again, I'm bringing these up in the case that council decides to approve this. I need to have some of these addressed as many as we can. The parking, the report addresses parking in such a way that it says that we can use green space to make up some extra parking. I would suggest that we take that and get that out of the report, because I don't think that we should be giving up green space that's being used in the park to permit parking instead. So I would suggest that we look at that and take that right out of there. As far as the club is concerned, I don't know how the club operates, but there is ample parking, but it could become a problem. And I would suggest that if this does happen, that the club looks at carpooling or something like that, so we don't have every individual bringing a vehicle to that location, because it can become a problem as far as parking is concerned. There were a number of items that were talked about, I think, in Ms. Olar's presentation, and referred to gas-powered cars not being allowed. But when they have events from out of town, that they would bring their gas-powered vehicles. Now, I would hope that the agreement specifically notes gas-powered remote cars not allowed. It doesn't matter when, if it's an event or if it's just a regular night out or whatever the case may be. I would also suggest that loudspeakers not be permitted at any time at those tennis courts. I think Ms. Olar also suggested that she had heard or she was told that there could be or possibly be a trailer on site that would store items that the cart club would use from time to time. I would also suggest that our agreement would address that part, that nothing be stored on the park proper itself. And I would suggest that it include no porta potties as well. There have been sport events happening at that park for years. Everybody talks about how long the park has been around. I went to the original St. Mary's and we used that park every day. There were never any washrooms. And there were never any needs, so I can't believe that we would need washrooms or porta potties because an RC club may use that facility. I think finally, there's two other items before I get to the final one. I think a big issue is the fact that we are deciding if we want to get into a lease agreement to a locked facility. We're going to take the usage 100% away from the neighborhood use and give it to a private club. Could you speak to that and give us the reasons that it has to be locked? And are there any other options? Could this work any other way? Because, in our conversations, and this has been going on, as Councillor Turco has said, from his point of view, and he is correct, since May 30th, the neighborhood meeting. I'm on Parks and Recreation, so I knew of it well before that. The locked facility creates a problem in the sense that the RC Car Club has said that it invites people to join a club, it wants to get kids interested in the sport or in the recreational activity, but yet if a child was to show up at the facility during the day or at any time, I'm not sure when the times would be, with their own remote control club, they wouldn't be able to access the court. It would be locked. Now, my understanding is that there would be directions on the number to call and what hours that the place is open and things like that. Could you speak to that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Nero. The reason that so I'll go back to the beginning question, which was why would the courts be locked? With regards to that, because we would be asking for the RC Car Club to provide insurance, which means they would be liable for anything that happens within that space. They need to make sure that it is protected and somebody's not getting in. They've also got a lot of investment in the equipment and in the tracks that they are keeping set up. So that would be the reason why it would have a gated access to the facility. And that's similar to other agreements that we have with the Playing Club and other organizations that do have a lease on facility land to run their activities, and the city supports them. With regards to youth and other people being involved, there would, as you indicated, there would be signage that would be up, letting people know how they could get involved, how they can reach out to the RC Car Club. I don't know if Marty can speak a little bit more because he is involved directly with the operations, but basically how they would look at engaging the community and getting more people involved. He could probably provide a bit of a better background. I don't want to speak out of turn.
Mr. Mayor, if we can have Mr. Schoen address.
Absolutely. Sir, are you comfortable addressing that question?
Yes, of course. All of them very good questions. And absolutely, if this was my neighborhood, I'd be just as concerned. So thank you. I will try to address, I've been making small notes as I've been listening to some of the concerns.
Let's just stay on the questions that are asked
Sure.
right now, as opposed to kind of responding to all the representations made by the people that are opposed.
Certainly. As for the lock and key, following up with Vivian, because the nature of what we discussed, how we would have to operate, because we would be constructing a removable remote control car track. It won't be that which would be suitable for bicycles, rollerblades, skateboards. And I don't mean like that they wouldn't actually work on it. But let's say somebody got hurt and we do have to carry liability. Unfortunately, that is not engineered for that style of activity. Similar to a bocce court, I think in previous, if I go back, some of them had been lock and keyed and the members took care of those. Looking at a similar approach, I'm not sure how all the previous functions work, but in today's day and age, I think everybody understands that in the last 20, 30 years and whatnot, at least since I've been around, that more and more frequently liability is becoming a very big issue. So to operate how some of these other clubs have been operating in other parts of Canada very freely, I wish that was the case. I would like to operate just like that. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. So we're jumping through every single possible hoop. We're willing to provide the liability for the access. As for the signage, yes, we will have signage posted, and not aggressively, of course, but we would like signage very clear as to how you're to access the RC facility, who to contact. The way it's going to operate, my intentions right now, of course, these are details that we have the entire winter to iron out, but we do have a lot of members working on different shifts, and they will be accessing the facility in different times. Some of them are officers of the club. They'll have the ability to allow, let's say, a junior member, somebody under the age of 13, providing their parent or somebody comes by, their guardian, and can provide some sort of legal signage saying it's okay for their child to be here and play. They're free to come. The way we're going to structure the club on just a very simple, ideal layout is it's going to be $100 roughly for a member for the entire year to access the club at their will. For anybody the ages of 18 to 13, $50. Under 13, free with a member. And that's, again, we're focusing on our kids. I have young kids. All the members have kids. It's a good thing to say, but without getting too far off. Was there another question regarding the signage you had? And then you mentioned parking and carpooling. We wanted to be on a bus route for one of those reasons.
I think those concerns are going to get addressed through this agreement, should this get approved. My concern, the question that I was looking to answer from you is the locked facility itself.
Yes.
If you want to promote it as for some other activity for children to get into, then how do you do that? And I think you answered it.
Yeah. Well, we'll have, we'll have likely posted times. We'll have the signage directly linked with our either Facebook page or our website. On there, you'll be able to find practice times. So let's say the young guys or gals from the neighborhood and whatnot, or even the adults, if they can't come with their parents, they can come on those practice days, providing they have a liability waiver done, just as you would if your children were involved in hockey, soccer, baseball, all the other things that require anything that moves and without a supervision. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple more, if I may. Mr. Sharon just mentioned that there's a $100 a year membership fee. Is this agreement looking to charge a usage fee to the club, seeing as that they are raising money from memberships?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Nero, that's something that we can address in the agreement. We have asked for either a deposit or a small annual fee to support, through the agreement. As well, depending on the length of the agreement, they're going to be looking at, they might have some initial costs that they have to do in order to set it up. So, that we need to take that factor into consideration, but that's something the agreement can address for sure.
Okay, and finally, Mr. Mayor, if I may, Ms. McLeod, I think the term in your report goes to no more than 2 years. I would suggest that, and I heard this word from one of my fellow councillors, that we look at this, if council decides to approve it, as a pilot project, that it be a 1-year term, and that, it have all the issues that I had just brought up in that and address them, and that it come back after the first pilot project year, I guess, the term of 1 year, come back to council for reconsideration. And we certainly at that time could get a very good picture from, from the neighbors relating how the season went, what the problems were, and I'm sure that the ward councillors, Councillor Turco and myself, would probably find out instantaneously if things weren't going well. But I can't think of anything else, and I hope council looks at it, and if there is anything else that they add to it, but those are my suggestions, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure if the clerk is looking for a resolution on this or taking points into consideration.
I've been thinking about how we would handle it as you've been speaking, but I think we need to hear from some other councils first, and we have some ideas on how to deal with it. So Councillor Hollingsworth, you're next on my list.
Thank you. I have a few questions, but I want to say thank you to Marty Sharon, the president of the Sault Ste. Marie Remote Control Car Club, and Vera Bigang, Wendy Olar, for coming to us and presenting two very good arguments. It just reinforces that our city, the residents that live in this city, are passionate about their neighborhoods and passionate about the hobbies they are involved with. My questions are starting with the following. I guess this is probably more towards Marty Sharon, but your remote control car club, you said that there is a fee of $100 or $50 depending on the age category. Is there a program associated with your club that helps underprivileged families or children that may not be able to have this money to participate?
Yes, I believe I do.
Okay.
So yes, we are going to charge a fee. Just to go a little bit into depth into what we're going to do with that fee, we have no intentions of keeping any money. There's nobody on a payroll. All the money goes back into the club and its resources and growing it. One of the things we have done throughout the years was with the Rotary Fest, or the Rotary Club of Sault Ste. Marie. We actually have 5 cars in partnership with them that we use. And we use those with some of the other events like Tenaris Family Day and SR Family Day in the past. The last year we did not do that. It's difficult to find volunteers some years, and we want to commit to only the best programs. Having a full-time facility like this enables us to have a home, and with that home it'll grow, and so will the ability for us to reach out to the neighborhood. And with some of the vehicles that we do have 5 on staff. Speaking with Carolyn and Connor, they are available to us in growing our club through Rotary as well. So something that they're willing to help us grow as we did with them in the past.
Okay. I have 2 more questions for you, if you don't mind, if that's okay with the mayor. I was reminded the other night when I was at the DSAP board. I sit on the DSAP board, which is the District of Social Services GOMA board. And I was reminded that the majority of underprivileged families live in the downtown area who really don't have enough money for rent. So again, I just want to directly ask you, if you have a child, a person that comes to you and says, I'm sorry, I don't have $50, I don't have any money, but I really want to be involved. Do you have a program to help this type of individual?
There is no program in place at the time because we do not have a permanent facility to which we can structure opportunities like that for the community. Back to leasing us this facility gives us the opportunity to do something like that, whether it be something specific like you said, or reaching out to, let's say, the Boys and Girls Club, other different groups within the city that have the same kind of personality as us and our members.
Okay, thank you. And at this time, I believe the tennis court is free. It's a park and it's open to all neighborhoods. Why, out of curiosity, you were at the Alexander Henry High School, why are you moving away from that location?
That location is currently, at the very moment, being transformed into a French immersion school. So we were notified 2 years prior by the Algoma District School Board that not only our use of the facility, but all others, including the volleyball clubs, the Sioux modelers, who we're very close with, who are using it on a regular basis, lacrosse, all those other sports, they're also forced to find a new home. Unfortunately, that was a wonderful thing that the Algoma District School Board was involved with in helping the local clubs, and they did it at a very subsidized rate. And something like that, an indoor facility, we were in our heyday. It was the best opportunity we had, and unfortunately, there's no private groups out there willing to offer anything like that to a very. We don't make a lot of money, so we can't afford a 6,000 square foot facility.
Okay. Sorry, did you say that Algoma School Board, did they consider another school, another location on their property?
I had worked with the Algoma District School Board following that to the best of our ability. The nature of our club, again, it takes a lot of work for us to set up and tear down a remote control car track, something that's worthy of enjoying and the way we expect these vehicles to run. If you do a tad bit of research, you'll see the amount of work that goes into one of these. So for us to rent a space from not just the Algoma District School Board, but from anybody else, we would require the minimum a weekend, and that's what we did with them. So we'd spend about 6 hours setting up a remote control car track, 4 hours practicing. The next day we'd do 8 hours of racing and 3 hours of teardown, which involved our entire weekend, half of that being work.
Okay. And I guess one last question for yourself, and then I have a couple questions for Virginia. What's the square footage right now that you're looking for?
The square footage that is available, I believe it's about 10,000 square feet within that facility. We're looking for, like, our track itself, we operate roughly around 6,000 for an ideal growing track to allow them the proper amount of racers, the wide enough lanes to make it safe for marshalling. That means putting people within the track in safe areas so that they can access the cars to move them over. The rest of the areas will be allotted for pit spacing, where we'll have areas where there's a lot of work done on these vehicles in between racing. Mm-hmm. So we'd like to do that. And like anything else, we know this is going to grow, so we don't want to limit ourselves either.
Okay. So, do you require lights at nighttime for night?
We are not going to be racing at nighttime, and I'm okay with Mr. Nero's suggestion with the 8:30.
Okay. And so it sounds like you need a hard surface?
Yes.
Asphalt or any hard surface?
Asphalt preferably, just because of the way we've adopted and the way that the racing facilities have changed. It provides us an opportunity to stay maintenance-free and low cost in operating, and that's pretty important for us. We do intend on repairing the surface and refinishing it to suit ourselves. So there is a startup cost, as Vivian mentioned, which is where the club finances go into. Is I can mostly assure you that the majority, if not all, of the finances generated in the first year and two are going to be going into upgrading the park facility in the hopes that we are going to be able to stay there.
Okay, thank you. If council does pass this, I hope that you would consider helping the underprivileged kids that would like to participate somehow. I have two other questions for Virginia.
Sorry, Virginia. Yeah.
Virginia, you mentioned that you were looking at some other options, but the other options did not basically pan out to their needs. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, yes, that is correct. We did look at what we had in our inventory, what the utilization, and a couple of the spaces that were underutilized didn't meet the requirements. So again, one, the footprint was too small, and the other, with the move of the seniors to the Northern Community Center, our intention is to do a lot more programming and pickleball leagues and that with the seniors at that location.
Okay. Did you also consider downtown, knowing that majority of the unprivileged families live downtown? Did you look at a location downtown?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, we looked at the inventory that we do have, and there isn't a lot of spaces that are city-owned facilities or spaces that are fenced in and that would meet the requirements. So that was the closest to the downtown area that could meet those needs.
Okay. When you said fenced in, there is portable fencing that we have used for the gardens before, the public gardens before, and they've been very effective. And there is an area, have you considered Esposito Park with the basically the hockey rink, where it's not used in the summer, and you have the hockey rink boards and so forth?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, no, we had not looked at that location. It is a grass surface, so we were looking for something that was hard packed, so either ideally pavement or very hard packed dirt. So that area is a grassed-in space.
Okay. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, none of our tennis courts or parks in the Sault Ste. Marie area, tennis especially, charge a fee. Is that correct? They're absolutely free to everyone?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, yes, we have 10 tennis courts in our inventory, and they are free to the public.
Okay. I just want to say thank you, but I do have some comments. I'll wait until it's time to make some comments.
Okay, Councillor Fada.
Mr. Mayor, just a couple of quick questions for Virginia. You did indicate, I think, in the fact that there's other groups that are currently also showing interest in using one of these parks right now. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Fada. Examples in the past of groups that have approached the city to help support their activities would include cricket. Recently, the community garden, which was at Allard Street, needed a new home, so it was moved to Forest Heights. We've had other groups in the past, another example we used was Sioux Modelers. So those are groups that do approach. There isn't anything right now. Ultimate Frisbee is another example of a group that we helped, and then also the disc golf. So.
Yeah, I was talking to a group, Mr. Mayor, I was talking to a group that was interested in a location for pickleball, and I thought they had progressed further in their request, but it sounds like they haven't, since you indicated that there's no, but they've already indicated that they have location, and it seems that things were moving along well, but I haven't talked to that individual recently, but it sounded like they were interested in this, and if we vote this down, I would suggest that we're setting a precedent that would be unfortunate, since we should always keep opportunities like this open. I'm thankful for Councillor Nero to bring up some of those conditions that he feels that are good in case this gets voted on, because I think it makes me feel more comfortable voting in favor of this, and I'm hoping that it's going to be something where the neighborhoods will be able to, or the neighborhood will be able to accept it. And I just want to make a question regarding the 1 year versus 2 years. Are we still entertaining the possibility of, does that still have to come out through a resolution to change the length for the lease?
There doesn't need to be any second resolution, Councillor Fada. When we get a sense of where council's going on this, if council would like to go in the direction of directing staff and negotiate a lease on some different terms, it'd just be a friendly amendment to what's before us, and we give council that direction, and they'd have to bring any lease back to us in any event.
Mm-hmm.
So it's still an open question as to the length of the term, if that's what you're asking.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Bruni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Sharon, if it's possible.
It is, Mr. Sharon. Thank you.
Some of these conditions that Councillor Nero has brought forward, for instance, washrooms, is that a hindrance for you, for your association for that area there? Do you require washrooms on site there?
We don't intend on it for the first year, because most of the activity will be come and go, practice activity. A lot of the our current members, when we're doing our actual racing, it's happening in the winter times more often than not. And there's a group in St. Ignace, I can't remember, they changed the name of their club, but it was Casey Hobbies and Raceway. So a lot of our group is just traveling down there during the winter time for their actual racing. I would love to do the racing there, but based on the growing concern, I don't feel like it's a good thing to start out with this year. So as we get involved with the community and as they find out, I guess, what kind of people are going to be using the facility in and around their homes, I think they'll learn that we're just a bunch of people just want to have some fun. But no, we don't require them right away.
Will you be holding a tournament of sort in the summertime?
We would like to, of course. You know, it would be wonderful if we had the facility to do that.
Well, let's say you have the facility at Wilcox. What about speakers, loudspeakers? How would you communicate? Is that a requirement?
No, we do have a lot of technology now. It's not a requirement. It sure is a luxury. But we do have a lot of monitors and a racing program that's able to set up in certain areas of the racetracks. So in the event that we do hold an event, we would use that equipment where we can place some monitors in certain areas where you can see when your next race is coming up, what the standings were for the last races, etc. That's how our races were going.
Councillor Bruni, if I may, Mr. Shawn, you heard a number of comments that the ward councillor made, Councillor Nero. Were you agreeable, would your club be agreeable with all the suggestions he made? Or is there anything that you don't think is amenable as far as the comments or suggestions Councillor Nero had?
No, we're very flexible. That's fine.
Go on, Councillor Bruni.
Okay. For parking, can you estimate how many vehicles on a Saturday night or Friday night? How many participants would be there?
Based on the current members we have now, I'd expect no more than 9 or 10, maybe give or take. It all depends on which time, who has which time. There's different people working different hours, so they'll be using it at different times during the day. But yeah, you're right. I think on a Friday or a Saturday, if it's a nice evening, there's a good chance that a group of us could show up and have an enjoyable time in a park.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, through to Virginia, if possible. Regarding the parking now, where would they park if they can't park on the green space? Would it be just on the street, on the streets on both sides?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni. We did reach out to, after we had the open house, that was one of the concerns that was brought forward, and we did reach out to the manager of traffic and communications to talk about what options were there, and he indicated that there was ample width in the roadway, and the road was designed to have on-street parking. In the past as well, it was indicated that that baseball diamond was used years ago as part of the regular baseball league, and there had been a section within the parking, like within the park, that had been designated for parking. But again, there's ample on-street parking because of the road width.
Okay, thank you. Virginia, back to the surface. So they would need something approximately 60 by 100 for 6,000 square feet. Am I, Mr. Girardi, would you, is that 6,000?
Well, you'd need, I'm not sure what size that they're going to require.
Well, they mentioned 6,000 square feet, am I correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni. I believe that was the size of the gym that was located at Alexander, the old Alexander Henry. So that was about the size of the space that we were looking for in order for them to set up their tracks, and the tennis courts provide enough space to do so, as well as enough space to be inside watching as well.
You also mentioned they want hard surface, asphalt or concrete. Would, like a compact gravel, would that be sufficient, or it's not? To Mr. Saran.
Based on the fact of, you probably could do that, but to keep it safe, we do have some members that aren't as mobile as others. So this gives us a good opportunity to branch out to them as well, where they're comfortable moving around. We were involved in a few different areas. The Alexander Henry worked really well with them. We've learned that the hard surface is better for us and our members. We have some members even in their 70s and 80s involved in other clubs, and as well as in wheelchairs. So having a hard surface is just we already know what we need. So without asking for not enough and then hoping for more later, we'd like what we would like to do our, to operate our club properly, just as most clubs, I think, that are involved with the city would like.
Okay, and one final question to Mr. Ron. How much money will you be investing in this if you have to, you're going to recondition the courts or the surface? How much money are you investing in this?
Based on our membership, it's going to be entirely on that. So we do have a lot of us are tradespeople, and we have tradespeople, we have people in law and whatever you guys do. So we do have an opportunity and access to equipment and some of the things we need to resurface facility. I don't know exactly what the cost is going to be, but we will find it and we will do it.
Okay, thank you, that's all, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so then we have Councillor Myers, and then Hoopanen, and then Krampadich.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Shawn, you can come back to the mic. Thank you very much. What is the season of operation that you'll be using?
Well, as long as it's nice out. Anything, as long as it's dry and clean. The cars that we operate are 1/10 scale, electric, typically brushless, which are quieter than brushed vehicles. So they can operate in anything from -10 to whichever temperature you'd like. It's just a matter of how long you're willing to stand out there.
Okay, and obviously this is not a roofed facility, so there'll be snow accumulation. So you would be doing the snow removal on the surface?
No, that'll be done for the year. Yeah, we're going to be operating within the spring and then the fall as the snow flies.
Yeah, well, as we know, sitting here on a day like today in almost 90-degree Fahrenheit temperatures, our weather is quite erratic. So hypothetically, your earliest is probably mid-April.
Yes.
I golfed last year on Good Friday. That's why I know that. I know I shouldn't say I golfed on Good Friday, but I did after I went to church.
God heard you.
I went to church first, though, Mr. Mayor. And actually, I digress, but my two friends who are my age or older, we all said, wow, our mothers aren't here any longer. I wonder if they know. But we did go to church first. But I do digress. Mid-April, obviously, would be a time where you probably
Typically,
begin.
yeah, as long as the surface is clean, you'll find people wanting to use it.
Okay, and then obviously through to approximately Thanksgiving.
A lot of our members throughout the summertime do vacation. They have things with their families and are involved in other sports and activities throughout the summertime. So I don't expect the midsummer to be super busy. The majority of the time is when you're going to see is going to be in the early spring up until probably the end of June. That's when I expect it to be relatively active, and then from probably at the end of August, September, from there on. But I mean, for those 2 summer months, most everybody's kind of gone.
Thank you. Just to be clear, did I understand you correctly saying that when you were in the Alec Henry facility, that was indoors?
That's correct. Yeah.
Did I understand you to say that you set up and tore down every weekend?
Yes.
Okay, so following that line of thinking a little bit, has there been an exhaustive search, I'm going to ask Ms. McLeod, on city facilities indoors, as well as both school boards, because I cannot believe that there isn't another indoor facility somewhere, because quite frankly, I think I'm hearing, I mean, you're looking for a permanent home.
That's correct.
And
yes.
obviously the things that you're willing to compromise on, and some of the points that Councillor Nero made were part of a discussion he and I had earlier this week, you know, when I was seeking some clarity on some of this, and, you know, the pilot project and some of these things. Really, we would like to see you have a permanent home too. I think that that's quite clear. The community and the neighbors mentioned it as well. So I'd really like to know, with that in mind, it sounds like you're willing to do quite a bit of work to have this indoor facility, which would be ideal. And I'm not going to put you on the spot right now, Ms. McLeod, but I'm feeling, quite frankly, that we may need to have a little bit more pursuit on this before we decide on it. I'm not sure I'm going to be ready to decide on it tonight.
But I think just two things, Councillor Myers. One is they're not looking, they don't want to be setting up and tearing down anymore every week.
Well, thank you for that, Mr. Mayor, but I did hear you say that you were in your heyday, that was your ideal. And that's why I thought, wait a minute, I heard you say that was just your epitome of a great place. You wouldn't have left there. You wouldn't be here tonight if it wasn't that they evicted you, correct?
Yeah, you're absolutely right in a lot of ways. The only problem with that, we learned, when I say in my heyday, I mean as for the amount of club members' involvement, people that would come to race. That doesn't mean the people that were willing to help set up and tear down. So there's a little difference. I may not have been so structured as to what I was explaining when I said my heyday.
Okay.
So the heyday.
I won't hold you to that.
So some nights, Sunday at 9 o'clock, and I hadn't eaten. I sometimes have regret taking on that decision to do that, knowing that where we really should be at was having a full-time facility where the luxury of this idea is that we can come and go as simple as opening a gate, and using the facility. We don't have to band together and get 15 people together on a dedicated weekend where everyone has to decide that we're all going to do this at the same time. We have to invest X amount of dollars and put a great amount of effort in. By the time Sunday came, it was rather exhausting, but that was the only option we did have at the time.
Okay.
It is not something that I'm actually willing to pursue again.
I hear you, and I appreciate you, and thank you for clarifying that. I think I did hear you say, though, that you would be still there. You would be happy to still be there if you could have been, but
I don't
we
know
won't
that.
press further. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know that.
Okay.
If
All
we
right.
knew nothing else, then maybe, but sometimes the lack of involvement was a very large issue, as with any club these days, to get somebody to stay late on a Sunday evening to tear down.
I know
or
it's not ideal, so I
come
appreciate
Sunday morning,
that.
yes. Okay.
I won't belabor that. But what I want, where it's leading me to, is that you mentioned that there could be periods of time throughout the season where it's dormant, and there may be times, and I guess where I'm going here is because I heard you say that you could tear down and set up. Is there an option to ever consider a period of time where it could be opened up again to the public? And I'm not going to put you on the spot to answer that, but it's something to think about, furthering on some of Councillor Nero's comments. The only other one that I was going to ask about, if I could, thank you, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to speak to staff here. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to our staff, I'm just going to press a little further on city facilities. Virginia, I know that you're exhaustive when you do reports for us, so I'm not questioning that you haven't turned every stone, but hearing a little bit more tonight about an indoor facility being an ideal, is it true that there's absolutely nowhere in any city facility that we could take a look at a permanent arrangement that would be indoors? And where I'm going to go here is that we've talked at this council table, we have a future plan to add on to the Northern Community Centre. So we're talking about other ice surfaces, but is this something that could be considered into our future planning with our expanding facilities so that, in fact, this may be a temporary arrangement. It may be a pilot for a year, which is my preference, but it may be that in 5 years it's no longer there. It isn't able to be in a permanent, dedicated space that they don't have to tear down and set up. Is that something that can be considered going forward? And there is nothing right now, correct? Or else you'd have been presenting that to us.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Myers, there wouldn't be anything currently in our inventory that would give that amount of space.
Okay.
We have very few facilities that we could accommodate that. And then if they were looking at, setting up, and they'd have to do the same thing, set up and tear down. We don't have dedicated space at this point, and we'd have to take a look at if that would even be feasible in the future.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's where I'm going to go, is that I think we need to keep this on our radar as council, is that as we look forward to expanding our recreational facilities, and that's the other reason why this is attractive to me as a pilot, because it'll give us an indication at this table as to how popular the sport is. I know nothing about it until I read these reports. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll have comments later.
Okay, Councillor Ruppinen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, just most of my questions have been answered, except one. Mr. Sharon, how many members do you have in the club?
Because we're not completely, we don't have a home, to offer a club fee would be unfair. So what we've done in the past is we do per race day. Currently, though, we did set up this year in preparation with working with the city, and we have 30 members currently active. That means who showed up for the last club meeting. When I say that, that means that's the people who showed up interested in the politics of the meeting. That doesn't mean how many people are that are willing to participate.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I need for now, Mr. Michaud. The other point I want to make now is that we really haven't put a lot of emphasis on the petition where we had 160 people. To me, that speaks volume. The neighborhood obviously doesn't want this. And it sounds like a lot of effort has gone on into this. I don't live in the neighborhood, and I'm not in the club. So I'm looking at this in a totally unbiased way. So I think the other questions have been answered, Mayor, and I'm fine now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ruppinen. Councillor Kompadich.
Thank you, Mayor Provenzano. Just a couple of quick questions to Mr. Sharon. Marty? I just want you to know that I built several RC cars myself and really enjoyed it. It was a great experience putting the batteries together and building the cars. And we were in St. Ignace and Gaylord and Sudbury, and we did a number of racing there, and it was absolutely fantastic. I guess my first question is regarding your governance and your rules with your bylaws. How many, do you have a quarterly meeting with your membership and your officers, or is it just a monthly, or are you meeting?
Well, typically, we bring up a meeting when there's an issue. Other than that, it was annual when we were running the setup teardown facility. And then prior to that, it was semi-annual, originally with way back when we were at Thompson's Farms. That would have been about 10 years ago, as we were learning what it is to be an organization. Since then, we do have an adoption of constitutions and bylaws, so which we are supposed to run by, and which we do run by, and that helps us create a sort of a code of conduct, what type of, what we expect from our members. And we expect them to act a certain way, we expect them to learn a certain way and function a certain way and grow together a certain way.
Oh, that's great. Okay. The other one I got is the electricity and charging the cars. Are you going to be drawing any municipal power at all?
There's a lot of ideas I'd like to throw around, but I mean, that's going to be dependent on what's going to, how, let's say, how the neighborhood would feel about anything like that. I understand they don't want anything, and I can totally understand if something was happening in my neighborhood, I want to know about it. And like a lot of people, it is fearful of change. I don't think that we're something to be feared. But in regards to the electricity, we do not require it. It would be a certain luxury for us because our cars are electric. But as most of us are pretty handy with electricity, you can charge the cars off the battery of your standing vehicles. You also can do the inversion. There's a lot of different opportunities. A lot of guys do carry, and kids and whatnot, they have extra battery packs if they can afford them. If not, they'll charge the ones that they have, or some of the guys in the club will have extra battery packs to lend other people. And that's kind of what we've done in the past.
Okay, my last question is, are you thinking about building stands for the operators if you have any competitions here locally?
We do have a stand that's already constructed. It's mobile. It's 20 feet by about 2.5 feet high, with 8-foot stairs going up to it and a full railing, double railing all the way around, which we've used. And we have made it so it's mobile, but we would likely refinish that and make sure it's up to city code, and probably leave that in place where we would like to make sure that people can come and go and use it as they will. Because when you're looking over top of a 6,000 square foot, you need that projection view. Standing at a ground level, it's difficult to engage your distance.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one question through you to Ms. McLeod. I know it's in the report, but can you take us through what the staff did to examine the use of this tennis court and what the results of that examination were?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker. A couple pieces have happened over the last couple years. In 2016, the Sault Ste. Marie Tennis Association had approached the city to look at which courts we could look at refurbishing. So they did a walkthrough of all of the 10 facilities, and at that time they identified 5 courts that they felt that we should look at refurbishing, which our Parks Department has been working on them. And recently, William Merrifield was also fully refurbished. From there, we also, our park staff are there on a regular basis cutting grass, so we have an understanding of the usage of the park through them. And then we completed 80 hours of surveying the tennis courts as well as the green space and park area, playground area. And during that time, there was 2 people that utilized the courts for approximately a half-hour period. We also did a series of drive-bys just randomly over the course of the end of May and June and July, just kind of as we went by the courts. And during that time, nobody was on the tennis courts as well. So that was kind of the process to get a better handle on and more concrete data on the usage.
So of the 80 hours that it was observed directly by staff, only half an hour of it was occupied?
by 2 individuals, correct?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Is that it, Councillor Shoemaker?
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Butland?
Question, I think, Mr. Mayor. My comments will come at the appropriate time, but be part of the preamble. I certainly would favor probably a one-year pilot project because oftentimes a petition will portray everything as being totally negative, a whole host of things, and they're usually not as bad as they say they are. And the proponent says everything is great and rosy, and it's often not as rosy as they say it is. Oftentimes it's somewhere in the middle. I'm not saying this way or the other. The one-year pilot, as it turns out, will be a 6 or month pilot unto itself. If we can prove or disprove, and like Councillor Myers, I really don't have any knowledge of the noise and everything that goes with this. So personally, I'd like to see it in action, and then we could decide. I guess my question, sorry for the preamble, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Sean is the setup and dismantling, is that a practical exercise for a one-year project?
I don't know that that's something that that doesn't really appeal, if I may be honest, and that's what you're looking for, as I understand. Yeah. So, no, it doesn't. The ideal for the club right now is to be functioning like you would if you had anything else. You wouldn't want to bring your couch back into your living room because you want to sit there instead of your one downstairs. It's being practical, and that's what we're looking forward to. Is the practicality of it is to have our own facility that is ready for us whenever we're willing and wanting to use it. And in turn, with doing that, having a ready, able facility is going to encourage people to come more often, use it more often, not have to band together. That's a large operation with a lot of manual labor, a lot of tools, a lot of, then you're constructing, let's say, some of our jumps and some of our stands out of lighter material than we'd like to make them out of because they have to be transported, which in turn leads to more damage and potentially not as safe of equipment. Having a full-time facility allows us to engineer something within ourselves that's safer for everyday use with other people around.
I think we have our staff member Virginia wants to make a comment here.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor, just for clarification, you're asking that the one-year term you would set up in the spring and then take down in the fall, not set up and take down every day, correct?
Oh, right.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes, yeah, we would clear it in the fall. Because our intentions, we do have to resurface the surface, of course. But as for the jumps and the stands, they are mobile. Nothing's permanent. Like the entire setup is not permanent, but we would like to leave it set up for the season. That would be wonderful. Yes, thank you.
Well, you had misunderstood what I
thought we were going down the same road we had earlier.
every day.
Yes.
No, it would be the 6 or 7 months.
That's right, for the duration of the operating year.
We might be getting a little repetitive here because we're kind of landing on the same thing.
That's fine. It's a very new concept, and I totally understand it.
Yeah, it isn't suggested that you'd be setting up and taking down. It would be for the year. So the club isn't adverse to a year pilot as opposed to a 2-year pilot. To drill down on the question.
Yeah, I think we can prove ourselves within a year. The only thing that does concern me with that is that, again, my intentions are to invest all the finances, initially the startup costs. We're going to have to put a lot of work into this to get it back to an operating facility, never mind an RC track, but to an operating surface. So we're willing to do that. And we have to make it feasible. So we're going to put all this money in. That's going to make a lot of guys fearful, and that maybe, well, what if they just kick us out the next year? Like that's what's going through my head as we're all discussing this. Sure. So the idea when we had discussed this with Vivian, sorry, I know, and I just got it.
If you could just, do you have a sense of what that capital investment would be?
I expect it's going to be in the few $1,000s range. And the good thing is we do have a certain amount of members, including ourselves, that are
tradespeople.
We're willing to put in because we know it's going to come out. We're not worried about that. So we'll get the money. We'll get whatever we need to get started, both either through the club funds and then personal investments with the intention of returning them. And it's just a something you'd do if you guys wanted to do something together with your friends. You trust each other.
Okay, thank you. Council, do we have any more questions of either the proponents or?
Mrs. Began and Mrs. Olar just come to the mic for a minute. Just one question regarding Councillor Nero's recommendations, changes. Would you be in favor of that?
I'm in total opposition of it.
You're,
But what I
okay.
hear, what
No,
I
no, I'm just asking the question. So you're not in favor of any of Mr. Nero's recommendations about?
I think it's important for them to come as a group. Sorry. I think it's important for them to come before council and the neighborhood as a group, which they haven't even approached any of us at all, to let us see what it's all about, how much noise there's going to be, what the traffic's going to be. Like, it's being decided here tonight. You're asking what you can do for them, or what they can do, like what you can do to make it better for them, but I feel like...
No, I'm not going to debate that. I
Okay,
mean,
no,
there was questions asked basically on the residents' behalf regarding changing some of the conditions. And I'm just asking you, would you be in favor of some of these conditions that Councillor Nero has brought forward?
I think it's hard for me to answer that just because, like you and everybody else here, we haven't actually had an opportunity to see the club in operation. I think that it's important for them to do that before the decision's made.
Okay, that's all I have, thanks.
Okay, so I think we're done with council's good questions, council. Like, yeah, so, we've been on this matter for a while, and there's a motion before us. I think I'd like comments, and if I see a trend in those comments that require a friendly amendment to the motion, the clerk and I will consider that, make that proposal. But let's get to the comments, and then we'll make a decision or not. So we will start, I'm going to start with, the ward councilors don't have their hands up yet, so we'll start with Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you. Again, thank you to Virginia McLeod and to, again, Marty Sharon and Vera Brang and Wendy Orland for coming to educate us. At this time, my comments are basically, I want to emphasize that the neighborhood put out a petition, 160 signatures. These are the people that live in the neighborhood. These are the people that are there 4 seasons of the year. These are the individuals, the families, the children that actually live and breathe in that neighborhood. 160 signatures. When are we going to stop and listen to those people that live in the neighborhood? Are we not in a society where we should take in consideration petitions? Are we not in a society where democracy is what rules us? So I cannot disregard those 160 signatures. And I want to say thank you for those individuals signing the petition. This is a neighborhood, and the neighborhood come to us. People are living here. And is it right for all of us to decide when we don't live in this neighborhood? And basically, if the car club individuals, if all the members lived in the neighborhood, that's one thing, but these individuals, not all of them live in the neighborhood either. Second thing, I'm not comfortable at this time to converting a free tennis court where it's not just used for tennis, but is used for for young toddlers to go and play ball while their parents watch them. I'm not comfortable in converting a tennis court that's also used for other activities by all children, practicing their bicycling in a safe fenced-in area that's free, and not comfortable in saying now we're going to allow a club where they're going to be charging $100 or $50, and there's no program for the underprivileged to access this sport. I'm not comfortable in passing this on to basically a club that charges a fee when right now this facility, or not facility, but this tennis area or whatnot you want to call it, is free. We need more free activities in this city. We had this great presentation by Tom Bear a couple of weeks ago about our community adjustment plan, and we were looking at quality of life. We're looking at more free activities for families and individuals and kids. So at this time, I also want to encourage staff in the future to continue to give us options, not 1 or 2, but hopefully 3 or 4 options in future reports so that we can debate further areas. There are other gray areas in the city that I think should be considered. In closing, I just want to also say that in the future, when an analysis is done, I understand that time is sometimes sensitive and we don't have enough time to do a proper 3 seasons, 4 season analysis. But was there staff going around in the springtime and the fall time? Or was it just in that period of time in July? 80 hours. Should we make our judgment call on 80 hours? When were they there in the evenings, on the weekends, on the long weekends, and again, spring and fall? So the last and closing piece I want to mention, and you might laugh and smile at this, but we're all creative thinkers around this table, especially our staff. I hate to say it, I'm sorry to say, and it's sad that the Sears stores is closing, but maybe there's a chance to do a pilot project in the Sears store, or Esposito Park. Hard surface or not, asphalt, cement, with the right creative thinking, you could put down a hard surface at an economic price. So with some creative thinking, I think we can relook at some other solutions. Right now, it's still late September. We're going to be going into the winter soon. We have still time to get together and think about some other solutions that's going to benefit everyone. Again, let's think about our families. Let's think about our kids. We can want to continue to have free activities that promote strength, exercise. Thank you.
Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll respectfully disagree with my friend, Councillor Hollingsworth. I think that these tennis courts have been monitored. They've been monitored directly for 80 hours, we heard. And during that 80-hour period, half hour of use was recorded, as well as we heard from our staff, random monitoring throughout the period of May, June, and July of this year. And it was determined that still there was not much usage at these tennis courts. With respect to the petition, I do appreciate the petition has come in. However, I do find some of the comments in the petition misleading, perhaps, to the people who were signing the petition. For example, don't take away a public park which services a large number of Sioux residents in order to accommodate a handful of RC car enthusiasts. This is not taking away a public park. This is closing off the tennis courts in a public park with the rest of the park to remain open. And as you scroll through this petition, there's 13 pages, a lot of the comments seem to reflect that there's a sense that the whole park's closing. That's not the case. It's the tennis courts within the park. And we heard from our staff tonight that it is 700 or 800 meters, or sorry, I believe meters away from recently refurbished tennis courts. So the tennis club was asked for their input. They directed which courts they thought should be improved. Those are the ones which have been improved. This one was not one of those. There is a possibility for repurposing it. I think it opens up one of our parks to more use, and which is what we want in our parks. We want more use, not less use. Currently, the tennis courts aren't being used, and I'm hopeful that this will create a whole avenue for folks who will be able to use this park in a more, in a way that satisfies more people than currently are using it.
Thank you, Councillor Bruni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just be very brief. I guess I'm very disappointed in the sense that both parties didn't get together. And for instance, if the remote control car club had a free evening at the Wilcox Tennis Court, so the residents in the area would have maybe a better understanding of what the noise level is, the parking facility, etc. I think if both parties did get together and had a free evening, maybe we wouldn't be here discussing this topic for a lengthy period. So maybe we can still have that, and maybe some councillors in the ward would be able to participate, and maybe we'll get a better handle on this. Thanks.
Councillor Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think that the reason from the beginning for me on this one, why I wanted to see the pilot project, is we can sit here all evening and conjecture what's going to be. The neighbors can conjecture, the car club can conjecture, we can conjecture, and no one knows. So we need to allow this to happen so that we can get a handle on it. Quite frankly, I sat on PRAC many, many years ago before I was on City Council. It's the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee made up of citizens who are appointed from within the community. And we get the PRAC agenda. We get the minutes from their agendas. So we have known about this for quite some time. If we look at our PRAC agendas and minutes, we know where this direction was going in terms of a report coming to council. So any of us who felt that we needed to know more prior to tonight had every opportunity to look into it if we'd wanted to do that. I think the critical piece here is the fact that this is not a neighborhood park owned by the neighbors. These folks are taxpayers. We're all taxpayers in this room, and we've got to get out of the mindset that it is our front or backyard. These are community facilities. They happen to be located somewhere where my house might be near to, but it isn't mine. It belongs to the whole community. And this is not being maximized. So quite frankly, to use it, to pay for it, and have all taxpayers paying for it, and have it sitting there passive, when in fact it was designed to have activity on it, is not prudent, and it's not responsible on our part as municipal leaders. So this is a pilot. We'll see how it goes. I am strongly in favor of looking at, and I hope that there's a report, well, there will be a report back to council on this, and I'll be most interested to see how this goes. And I'm sure you'll find a number of us cruising through there next year when this activity is going on, so that we're all enlightened and we will sit here and look at it through those kinds of eyes. But I am very comfortable that we need to be doing something to look at expanded uses of our facilities. We need to be looking at expanded activities in our community. And I thank the club and I thank the neighbors too for being here tonight and letting us have that opportunity to vet this thoroughly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So any other councillors for comments? Councillor Nero.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think you're going to want to hear my comments after I've finished, but I'm going to. I've heard a number of times around the table that we're trying to make a decision on something we don't know what it sounds like. The neighbors are saying, have said that they should have or could have been approached earlier, and they could have had a demonstration at the tennis courts. We're at a time in the year right now, if we approve this or not tonight, I don't think by the time the lease agreement comes back that there will be much activity from the card club at that tennis court. So why don't we defer this to the next meeting, would give Ms. McLeod a chance to put all of the suggestions that came up into another report, subsequent report. And during that time, why don't we set up a demonstration and ask that the most possible number of members of the club show up, that we have the most possible cars at the facility. We should also do another mail out to the 400-meter radius of the neighborhood, and council should be invited to attend that night, and let's hear what this is all about.
Well, I get this, the second part of your suggestion, which would be to have a demonstration. I don't know what that takes from the people in the RC Club, but the first part of having staff do another report, Councilor Nero, I don't think that is really a valid request, because staff has been working on this for quite a while, and you've got a thorough report in front of you. If you look at the motion is not fixing the terms of the agreement. All it's doing is directing staff, giving staff the authority to enter into negotiations with the car club. That would have to come back to us. So staff can take into consideration what they heard here in those negotiations, but I don't see directing staff to do another.
That's the subsequent report I'm referring to.
Well, sure, but that's not going to happen if this fails. If this fails, yes, Councilor Turco.
Your comment?
Well, not yet. You can't. So if this fails, right? Staff isn't going to enter into negotiations. So that's the second report. The second report would be, if this passes, staff would negotiate and they'd report back to us on what those negotiations, where those negotiations went. Okay. Councilor Turco?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. But Mr. Mayor, with all due respect, and I agree with, I don't know who it was that said that, was it Councillor Hollingsworth said that we're not listening? We're not listening. What we're doing here, we're assuming that the people who are here tonight, and the ones who have spoken to myself and Councillor Lear, I would imagine, are not being heard. What we're assuming here tonight is, well, all the argument, with all due respect to everybody, and I'm not nothing against the car club, is that we pretty well going with the idea that this car club is going there. No, the people don't want it. So if we're going to vote, let's just vote on it and say yes or no. This is where the club is, without, coming up with these other arguments.
Councillor Turco, I'm saying the exactly same thing as you. I'm saying this motion should be voted on.
Well, let's call a vote then. I'll call a question.
I'm happy to call a question.
Okay.
Yeah. Hold on. Councillor Turco, we were taking comments from councillors, which we always do, and then we were going to put the question to everybody. That's what we were doing. Councillor Bruni?
Why can't we defer it so the car club can do a demonstration for the residents in the area? If they've never experienced it, and
there's no motion to defer in front of us. If someone wants to move a deferral and someone wants a second deferral, okay, so you move a deferral to when?
Till next meeting.
Okay. So the motion is to defer this matter for one meeting.
So if the car club would be in favor of doing a demonstration for the residents in the area, is that possible?
So
at Wilcox Park.
We need a seconder for that motion. So the motion is to defer this for one meeting and to require to ask the car club to do this demonstration. So the seconder is Councillor Nero. The question I was asking the clerk, because I couldn't recall off the top of my head, is the motion to defer 1 for, 1 against, or is it open? One. Okay, so we'll have someone that, would you like to speak for the deferral?
I'll speak for the deferral,
And then
yes.
Councillor Myers will speak against the deferral, and then we'll have a vote on the deferral.
Why I'm asking for the deferral is several councillors have stated they know nothing about the remote control car club. The residents in the area have never seen a demonstration, an evening of the remote control cars. So why not get both parties together, have a demonstration one night? Maybe the residents in the area that have over 160 signatures would be able to go that evening, listen and watch, and find out what the noise level is, the parking facility issues, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And maybe that can be all eliminated by having a demonstration of one night. It doesn't pertain to the city. The car club and the residents would have to put this on and maybe send us an email to the councillors and whatever, and city staff. If they want to go and visit, they can go visit it. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
That's my deferral.
Councillor Myers.
Instead of voting on something that we're not 100% sure, as I heard during the conversation.
You've had your say. Councillor Myers?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reason I would vote against this is because, quite frankly, to go, and I don't know, we can't obviously go to Wilcox Park. They're not set up yet to do it there. So I don't know where they'd have to go to set up if they're still currently set up. And I think we need to ask that question, whether we're asking something that they're incapable of doing. But I'll leave that to you, Mr. Mayor. But I don't think 1 week is going to make any difference. For me, I don't care. If you want to defer it to, 2 weeks for the next meeting, that's fine. But for what gain? The issues are the issues of the entire operation ongoing, not for one night or for 1 hour. And I still want to see a pilot of this. I want to know how it's going to be, looking at the whole thing. And I think that, quite frankly, all we're doing is, avoiding making a decision that needs to be made.
So it's relevant to the motion before us, Mr. Sharon. If it was deferred, would you be in a position to set up a course and do a demonstration? If it's not practical, please tell us. That's relevant to the deferral.
Prior to this, we did have an open house as directed by Parks and Recs to that open house. I believe they sent out flyers to each and every individual in and around the radius, from what we understood. There was approximately 37 people who showed up, over half of which were actual club members there to help educate the people of the neighborhood. We brought over 7 cars with us, electric, ready to run. We drove them around on the tables in the area. We were welcome to take them outside. We were willing to show them whatever it is they wanted to know. There were those that came from the neighborhood that were interested in learning about the cars and how we were going to operate, and you can genuinely tell there were concerns, and we spoke with them about them, and I believe over half of them left relatively satisfied. And there was a certain number that were not going to be satisfied no matter what we said.
Thank you, Mr. Schrock.
And sorry, one more may I add. We do have several members here with us who live in the neighborhood who were never confronted with the petition.
Okay, thank you very much. No more comments on this, Councillor Bruni. The deferral's a for and against, Mr. Councillor Bruni. The deferral's for and against.
Wasn't for indoors, it's for outdoors, it's for the neighborhood. It's on where the...
Councillor Bruni, you're still arguing the point. So we're going to have a vote on the deferral. All in favor of the deferral? Opposed to the deferral? The deferral's defeated. Okay, so we're on the main question again. We'll take some submissions from council and then we'll have a vote on it. I'd have no one left on my list. Are we? Okay, seconder on that? All in favor? Okay, so the vote's been called. Recorded vote. Councillor, Mr. Clerk, please.
Excuse me, Councillor Turco,
Against.
Councillor Fata,
For.
Councillor Christian. For. Councillor Krampadich.
For.
Councillor Hupinen.
Against.
Councillor Hollingsworth.
Against.
Councillor Grandinetti.
For.
Councillor Shoemaker.
For.
Councillor Nero.
For.
Councillor Bruni.
Against.
Councillor Myers.
For.
Councillor Buckland.
For.
Mayor Provenzano.
For. Motion's carried. Thank you, folks. So, council, we're on the consent agenda. Any matters in the consent agenda? Councillor Grandinetti, you can begin.
Just bear with me a minute here. 6-7. Request for financial assistance.
Sure, 6-7 it is.
I don't know who can answer my question. Virginia McLeod. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Virginia McLeod. It says here that we're giving them.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, no, I'm just.
Oh, you want to give the audience a chance to clear? No problem. Councillor Myers, would you like to take the podium for a second? I could use a bit of a break. We're at 6-7, Councillor Grandinetti.
Yeah. It says here that we're giving $400 in financial assistance. Now, is this per individual or for all? I believe it's 4 of them that are going to the swim competition.
Through you, Mrs. Acting Mayor, to Councillor Grandinetti. It's for a team, so there's set levels. Individuals would receive 200, and depending on the number on the team, either 400 or 750. So it's for the combined team that went.
Okay, thank you. Madam Acting Mayor, I'm done with this item. I have a couple more. Oops.
Yeah,
Mrs.
sure, go ahead.
Acting Mayor
Yeah, go
and
ahead.
members of council, if I can just interrupt. Councillor Christian needs to raise a conflict that he failed to raise earlier.
Thank you,
just
Mr.
make that
Clerk.
conflict.
Yep. I have a conflict on bylaw 11.1.2. I'm employed by Algoma District School Board. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Christian. Back to Councillor Grandinetti. You wanted to move on from item 6.7?
Yes.
But just before we do, is there anybody else that had any question on 6.7? No? Okay, go ahead, Councillor Grandinetti. What's your next item?
Item 6.21.
6.21?
The extension of the refuse collection.
Okay, go ahead.
Through you to, I guess would be legal, or Mr. Girardi. It says that we're going to spend $28,800 plus HST for an RFP by ACON, like just to extend this contract. Is this not something that legal could do in-house? Because it's almost like every meeting we're spending money on consultants or for RFPs that I believe most of this could be done in-house.
Okay, well, we'll let the Deputy CEO answer it?
Yes, through you, through Acting Mayor to Councillor Grandinetti. The extension is already part of the existing contract, so we'll just be moving on that. The $28,000 will be used for ACOMP to prepare the RFP.
Kind of sounds like a little much just to prepare an RFP for a contract extension.
Through Acting Mayor to Councillor Grandinetti, there's I think over 100 pages in that contract that have to be we have to go through. We have to decide on which approach we're going to be taking as far as the efficiencies, the labor, if we're going to be going manual, if we're going to be going automated. We have to look at where the cost savings could be. It's very extensive. That's why they're not done that often, and that's why we have this option of the one-year extension so that we can get into preparations for this, because it is a long period of time before we can get this, if a new contractor or even the existing contractor was to take over, to get equipment and to get things up and running.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy CEO. And I just want to add, this is not the first time we've done this. This is a standard practice.
To Acting Mayor, yes.
Yeah. So, Mr. Grannon, anything more on that? Because I think Councillor Shoemaker wants to come in on it. Go ahead, Councillor Shoemaker, on 6.2.1.
Yes, 6.21, Madam Acting Mayor.
6.2.
Through you to the Deputy CAO, sort of implicit in the report, but I want to make sure I'm not misreading it, is that the RFP could not be prepared before June 2018. Is that correct?
I guess I'd have to refer to purchasing or finance on the exact timing. But again, with the amount of time that it takes to do it, we have to do it far in advance, and that's why we're trying to get to it now.
Okay. Is that all right, Mr. Shoemaker, or you want to hear from
Well,
Mr. Gowans?
I'm not sure. If Mr. Gowans has something
Mr. Gowans,
bad,
can you add
certainly.
to that?
Through you, Acting Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, I think that the issue for the lead time is more concerned with preparing for the contractor going forward. It is an extensive RFP, as Deputy CEO Girardi mentioned. There is over 100 pages in it, but part of the issues is based on the award of that RFP in the future, it may be that a different contractor is selected or a different approach is selected. The equipment takes up to 10 months to come in. So for a normal transition, it would take that amount of time.
Okay.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Shoemaker?
Yes, another question. Does this, thank you for the answer there. Does this refuse collection contract cover the entire city?
Acting Mayor to Councillor Shoemaker. This is for a portion of the city. Portion is done by city, and we call our city portion is core, which is the downtown, and all the outside area would be the outside of the core would be the contractor. They're doing about 14,600 stops in inner city. The core is about 12,340. But you could understand the core ones are a little more difficult because the downtown area is a little more difficult to collect garbage in.
And final question on this point. Thank you, Mr. Girardi. If, hypothetically, if we go to a new system for the collection outside of the core, would that require that we change our practice that we're collecting on the inside of the core, that we're collecting with city forces?
Through Acting Mayor to Councillor Shoemaker, our practices are exactly the same right now. Potentially going forward, and we'll be reviewing this as part of this RFP. We would like to go fully automated. Number one, we have to look at what changes have happened since the last time we had put out a contract, and one of the significant changes is the amount of needles that we're dealing with today, and the health and safety issues that we're having, not just related to back and shoulder injuries, but related to injuries that are come from attracting needles.
Okay, is that it on 6.21? Anybody else? Okay, Mr. Granini, you were finished. Anyone else on consent? Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you.
What item?
Item 6.12 and 6.13.
Okay, Black Road reconstruction.
Through you.
Or excuse me, Bruce Street reconstruction.
Both of them.
Oh, Bruce and Black, okay.
Both of them. Same question.
My bifocals.
They both state in the financial implication that the project can be accommodated within the $200,000 previously approved budget. But what is the actual costs associated with them? That's what's not sort of spelled out in the report, and I'm wondering if you've got those numbers.
So that question will go to Mr. Remiel.
Yes.
Through you,
Ms.
Acting
Carroll.
Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker. The Black Road reconstruction design and contract administration is $267,000 through the proposal, and Bruce Street was approximately $218,000. The $200,000 that's referenced in the report was earmarked back in July to cover off some 2018 these are 2018 works that are not approved by the 2018 budget yet. So that's money that's earmarked, carved out to cover off work that will happen in 2017 ahead of the 2018 budget being approved. There's more than enough money in that 200,000. It won't be near that.
So though you mentioned the contracts for one of them is 267,000, only 200,000 is approved, it's not going to exceed 200,000 this calendar year.
Correct.
Okay. Got a list. Just let me. And are any of was there consideration given to either Bruce Street or Black Road to do the engineering work in-house?
Through you, Acting Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker. Yes, I believe Don Elliott in July as well did the 2018 engineering procurement report, and in writing that report, we identified what projects we would do in-house. One on the books for next year is the Simpson Street reconstruction. We're doing that with city staff, as well as all the paving contracts for next year. So any more than that is getting pretty close to our threshold with our current complement of staff.
Okay, thank you.
That was 6.13, was that correct?
And 6.12.
So are we done both those, Councilor Shoemaker?
I am.
Anybody else on those? Okay, anybody else for the consent agenda? Councilor Shoemaker?
Yes, 6.4. Tender for City Marina Dock Replacement Project and Bondar Dock Replacement Project. We discussed at I don't know if it was the last meeting or a couple meetings ago, the fact that we are, or perhaps that we should do something with the Norgoma in the not so distant future. And so I'm wondering if any of the work that is outlined in this report in any way affects a potential motion that's coming, not a potential motion, a motion that is coming at the next council meeting that will ask for options on reconfiguring or looking at upgrades to the Bondar Marina.
I think Virginia is probably the person to speak to that, but maybe Tom Vare can take it. My understanding is no, that the work being done in the marina downtown is to the fuel dock, which is a mandatory piece of work. But Mr. Vare?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, that is correct. I did speak with Virginia earlier today, and the work for the Bondar Marina will focus just on the fuel dock. We don't anticipate that work there, no matter what happens with the Norgoma, would be affected by that work on the fuel dock. It is a project that's still necessary to continue given the state of the fuel dock and the need to repair that facility.
Okay, good, thank you. And there was one other question actually that talks about a marina reserve in the report, and that's the first time I think I've come across a reference to the marina reserve. What is the balance of that reserve, do we know? Through you, Mr. Mayor?
I do not know, Mr. Vare, or does Jake? Jake, do you know?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, that's an old reserve. I believe there was only about $13,000 left in it, so they're essentially eating the rest of that up. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else on that agenda item? On that agenda item, Councillor Hollingsworth?
6.4, the marina.
Yeah, that's the one we're on. Go ahead.
Thank you. I guess Virginia's not back, so this is for Tom Vare. Just for clarification, you were talking about the fuel dock, but you were also referring to the finger docks, and the finger docks are at Pine Street? Okay. So just to recap, all these changes, or I should say all these improvements, are the fuel dock, finger docks, Is there anything to do with the electrical boxes where boats can plug into? Any new work in that area? Is there any new work to any of the piping so people can put the hose in, wash their boats? Is it just really truly finger docks and the field docks?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth. As far as I'm aware, it is just to the docks themselves and the repairs to those docks.
Okay. And the question with regards is, when you put these agreements together, I'm assuming that you put a contingency plan together should they find some other repairs that's requested. Is that true? Do you put a contingency plan together? And if so, do you usually put 10% towards the project? And if not, are you going to be coming back to us asking for more money?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth. I believe purchasing, Tim Gowans can speak to that item.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, there is a contingency built into the tender. Unfortunately, as in with any work, if something that wasn't anticipated as a possibility happened, then CSD would have to come back with a report as to how that might be managed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody else on that, agenda item 6.4? Seeing none, anything else in the consent agenda, council? Seeing none, we can have a vote on the consent agenda. Mr. Clerk, you already read the motion, I assume?
No, I haven't. I'll read it right now.
Hurry up and do it before they change their minds.
For the consent agenda, we have a motion by Councillors Shoemaker and Turco. Resolved that all the items listed under date 2017-09-25, agenda item 6, consent agenda be approved as recommended.
All in favor? Carried.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, this brings us to section 8 of the agenda, 8.1, utility distribution microgrid. A motion by Councillors Butland and Christian. Whereas PUC has been working on a utility distribution microgrid project for 3 years, and the project will require the approval and support of City Council to proceed if approved by the PUC Board of Directors. And whereas the UDM project is a large project and City Council should have thorough information at its disposal to assess whether or not it will ultimately support the UDM project. And whereas the PUC executive will present the technical aspects and costs of the UDM project to City Council, including the risks and benefits from the PUC perspective. And whereas the UDM project may have a broader social, economic, or developmental benefits, and City Council should have an assessment of those prior to making its decision. Now, therefore, City Council directs the CAO to ensure that City Council receives a report from the City with input from the SSM EDC and the SSMIC outlining whether or not there are any broader socioeconomic or development benefits or risks of the UDM project.
Councillor Butler, maybe if I can speak to this for a minute, and then we'll let you and Councillor Christian have anything you want to say. So this is a project that's been at the PUC for a few years. It's been in front of council before, in conversations with Councillor Butland and asking kind of where this was at and when it would be back at council, if it would be back at council. In conversations with city staff who would ask me what council would be expecting or when they should work on this or prepare for it, I thought the motion was appropriate. It's important to recognize that the motion's in the context of this matter being decided by the PUC Board of Directors. So if the PUC Board of Directors chooses to move ahead with this project, it would be contingent upon council approval. And it's a big project, so it would have to come here. So they still have to make those decisions in that assessment. So the point is it's here to really authorize staff to work on it in the event it's coming our way. We don't want staff to get notice that this proposal is going to be in front of City Council, and then City Council have a bunch of questions that staff are unable to answer. So we wanted to give staff the leeway and the authorization that this is something that they could be looking at and working on in preparation for the matter coming before Council. So that's the impetus of the motion, but I want to be clear that it really is something that the PUC Board of Directors is working on, and we'll have to make a decision on, before it comes here again. So with that noted, Councillor Butland, if you wanted to make any comments, go ahead. And then Councillor Christian, if you wanted to add anything, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for taking a leadership on this one, as you point out, and he wrote the resolution. It's been before PUC for 3 years, and after 3 years, it has become a timing issue. So it is very timely that it is before us now. Has, in fact, the PUC passed a resolution endorsing this or not?
I think that the PUC Board of Directors did pass a resolution to direct the PUC staff to work on this project. There were a number of conditions in that resolution that the PUC Board of Directors required be satisfied to move ahead with the project. So it was an authorizing resolution to have PUC staff continue to work on this, but there were a number of conditions that the project had to meet if the project was going to go forward. So that's the process that they're in now.
Thanks for the clarification. I think the report that will come back, hopefully in a very, very timely fashion, will be high positive. It's not an easy concept. The UDM talks about a microgrid, and I've been calling it a smart grid for 3 or 4 years. I don't know if they're interchangeable or not, but it's a concept that I've been following for several years. And again, it's not the easiest concept, and I'm not maybe the smartest guy, but it's the way of the future, and it's becoming more and more. This is where we will be going. Whether this is the route we take now, that's another question. I think this report will answer that. The country of India, I just take one example, in this year is spending $44 billion on smart grid projects. Now, all of us can appreciate that India's transmission system may not be state-of-the-art, but they're going there, and they're going in a hurry. $44 billion. And so this whole idea, the report will, I'm sure, address the basics, but beyond that. It's more than just a transmission of power. Let's take advantage of our situation, which we have here. One of the reasons I believe that it is here is because of wind, because of solar, because of energy storage, because of solar panels and some other things that are perhaps on the front burner. So I'm convinced the report will come back in a positive nature and hopefully convince the rest of us. It also accelerates the work that the PUC will have to do as far as infrastructure goes. So certainly, Mr. Mayor, I wouldn't mind serving on the committee if that was okay with you and council when this group gets together.
Sure.
Thank you.
Councilor Christian.
Yeah, I'll keep my comments brief. I just want to thank you for clarifying the resolution. I think it's important as a board member. This resolution and the decision of council does not preclude the decision that the board has to make of the PUC on this issue. It has been a while. It's complicated. The financing, everything else has changed somewhat over time. It is before the PUC board. There are conditions that have been put forward, but the process continues to move forward. I think that's important. This being one of them, that the shareholder needs to eventually agree to it. But it is a decision that the board has to make. There are issues that the mayor has pointed out in this resolution that are broad in scope. The PUC board is concerned about the business case for this, and so that's independent of what this resolution is hoping to accomplish with City Council. If it gets to the point where the Board of Directors, PUC, approves it, then it will be before Council, and this resolution will help us make that final decision. Thank you.
Anybody else on the matter? Seeing none, all in favor? Resolution's carried.
Under Agenda Item 8.2, Amazon Second Headquarters, motion by Councillor Shoemaker and Grandinetti. Whereas Amazon is looking to establish a second headquarters in North America and has put out a request for proposal for interested parties to consider, and whereas Amazon has listed the following criteria as some of the ideal criteria for the development of their second headquarters: proximity to population centers, proximity to international airport, proximity to major highways, access to mass transit, up to 100+ acres of green fields, access to labor, and quality of life. And whereas Sault Ste. Marie is within a 1-hour flight of international airports in both Toronto and Detroit, and whereas Sault Ste. Marie is also within a 1-hour flight of large population centers such as Toronto and Detroit, and whereas Sault Ste. Marie has easy access to both the Canadian and American markets through its proximity to both the Trans-Canada Highway and the U.S. interstate system, specifically I-75, which runs along the entire length of the continental United States, as well as access to the entire Northeast and Midwest markets through Great Lakes shipping, and access to both the Canadian and U.S. rail systems. And whereas public transit is readily available or could be made readily available for any location in Sault Ste. Marie, and whereas Sault Ste. Marie has many options for potential sites that could house a 500,000 square foot building, and whereas working with Sault College, Algoma University, and Lake Superior State University, the labor market for the required workforce could be ready for whatever Amazon's needs were. And whereas the quality of life in Sault Ste. Marie is second to none, including access to recreational activities such as hiking, fishing, boating, camping, skiing, cross-border shopping, easy access to any destination in the world through the Sault Ste. Marie Airport and the Chippewa County Airport, and whereas Sault Ste. Marie has not faced the severe weather and unpredictability faced elsewhere by communities elsewhere in the southern and eastern United States. Now therefore be it resolved that staff, in conjunction with the Economic Development Corporation, review Amazon's request for proposals, documents for a second headquarters, and submit a proposal to Amazon for Sault Ste. Marie to be the host city for their project. And further be it resolved that should staff consider it appropriate, that Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario and Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan consider making a joint bid to be sister hosts for Amazon's second headquarters.
Okay, Councillor Shoemaker, we're going to start with you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am thrilled to be the mover of this motion, and I hope that Council will pass it unanimously this evening. When Amazon announced a couple weeks ago that they were looking for a location to host their a second headquarters for them, I was as skeptical as the next person about the Sioux's chances. However, after speaking to my Ward 6 counterpart, Ozzy, after the RFP came out, we talked through Amazon's RFP, and we're both convinced that the Sault would be an ideal location for this global giant. I looked through Amazon's RFP, and they talk about requirements, priorities, and preferences. On the requirements side, they say they're going to need 100+ acres of property for a 500,000 square foot building. We've got this. The Innovation Center and EDC have identified 4 sites in town, some privately owned, some government owned, that fit this bill. On the preferences side, they want access to mass transit at the site. We have this. At 3 of the prospective sites, we've already got it. At the other, it would take a couple minor changes to make it happen. On the preferences side, Amazon wants to be within 1 to 2 miles of major arterial roads and highways. We check this box multiple times. As a border community, the Twin Saults have links to both the U.S. interstate system and the Trans-Canada Highway right in the heart of our cities. Only Windsor and Detroit can boast similar access to highways in both Canada and the U.S., and even then, the logjam at their borders affect delivery times, and Windsor does not connect easily with Western Canada and the Midwestern United States as Sault Ste. Marie does. On the preferences side, Amazon wants proximity to international airports. Again, we check this box multiple times. A quick Air Canada or Porter flight from Sault, Ontario will connect you to Toronto, which can get you anywhere in the world. Similarly, a quick Delta flight from Chippewa County will connect you to Detroit, from which you can get anywhere in the world. It is, once again, a benefit that other communities cannot match. Also on the preferences side, Amazon wants proximity to a population center of more than 1 million. Here, I say we've got it too. Though we lack this one directly, we make up for it in other areas. We've got this one because of our proximity to Detroit and Toronto, which means we have huge population centers a quick 1-hour flight away. It's better to fly 1 hour to a quick population center than to be stuck 2 hours in traffic and not get anywhere. Amazon has a commitment to sustainability. Here, once again, nobody can beat the Twin Saults. In Sault, Ontario, we are the alternative energy capital of North America. In both cities, hydroelectric power keeps the lights on, and we've got enough wind and solar power, and now power storage, to keep the lights on in Sault Ste. Marie, both sides. We experience fewer power outages in Sault Ste. Marie than the rest of Ontario, and when we do experience power outages, they are over more quickly than in the rest of Ontario. On the logistics side, Amazon needs to get people to it and products out. Again, I say we cannot be beat in this category. Nobody can claim better access to the Great Lakes than the Twin Saults. We are at the heart of the three upper Great Lakes. We have access through shipping channels to 40 million North Americans. We have rail access directly from Sault, Ontario into Michigan and the US Midwest. We have rail access from Sault, Ontario north, west, and east. We have access to the US interstates and Canadian highways. Name another city that checks all those boxes. We can provide access to labor markets that others can only dream of. We've got two universities and a great college minutes away from one another. Lake State, Algoma U, and Sault College can provide the education and training that Amazon needs. In fact, Sault College just partnered with Microsoft to create 100 jobs, to create what's expected to become 100 jobs locally. It has been done, and it can be done again for Amazon. On affordability, the Sault cannot be beat. There are 250 homes for sale in Sault, Michigan right now, and the median price of those homes is $75,000 US. On the Ontario side, there are 500 houses for sale, and the median price for those homes, 200,000 Canadian dollars. In fact, on the Canadian side, the most expensive house you can buy is $1.25 million, and that gets you a 3,000 square foot home on 3 acres of waterfront land. Try finding that in Toronto, Mr. Mayor.
I wouldn't even make the effort, Councillor Schumacher.
Quality of life is important to Amazon. Now bear with me, because we have so much in the quality of life department that this will take a minute. Skiing and snowboarding at Searchmont, tourist attractions like the Agua Canyon, Sioux Locks boat tours, biking and recreational activities along the Hub Trail, a pump track, hiking trails at Hiawatha and throughout the Algoma District, some of the best beaches around at Harmony Bay and Pointe du Chêne, a major event centers with concerts and the Sioux Greyhounds, community events like Rotary Fest and Downtown Days, and hopefully soon, Queen Street Party on weekend nights. Some of the best boating around, canoeing and kayaking right from downtown, snowmobile trails all around us, an art gallery and bushplane museum, camping in every direction, hockey rinks everywhere, skateboard park, lots of community pools, soccer fields, baseball diamonds, horseback riding, tennis courts, pickleball courts, cricket league, an RC club, and so much more. Amazon is young, a company of some 25 years old. They are looking for a second headquarters for their next 50 to 100 years. Here again, the Sioux has the upper hand. Popular Science put out an article earlier this year that said in the year 2100, Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan will be the safest environment and climate in North America. We will not be faced with the hurricanes of the southern and eastern borders, and the drought and the wildfires of the western borders, or the tornadoes of the Midwest. We are ideally placed to provide safe and predictable weather for a company and their employees. Though I will say, we get the occasional snowfall. The naysayers will tell us that we aren't the type of city that can sustain a megacorporate headquarters. How do those naysayers explain away the fact that the OLG has been here since 1989 and brings in $2 billion in net revenues every year to the province? I know I've been a few minutes, Mr. Mayor, but all this is to say, don't just read the headlines and think it'll never happen. Read the RFP and think, how can we make it happen? That's what I hope to accomplish with this resolution, and if we don't land Amazon's headquarters, at least we'll have made an honest effort to do so, and in the process, who knows, we may entice other businesses to take a second look at Sault Ste. Marie.
As the seconder, Councillor Grandinetti, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No comments after that.
Okay. Well, I agree. That was a fantastic. I think you've done most of the work there, Councillor Shoemaker. So I want to, before we go around the horseshoe and take comments, I want to just recognize and applaud you for your ambition. I think it's important for a community to have ambition. I see no harm in aiming high, and I think it's a positive thing. I'd ask if, as the mover and seconder of the resolution, you'd consider a friendly amendment, which would see some city councillors assisting staff when doing some of the heavy lifting on this, because it's a short timeline. And to do this right, and I think if we're going to do anything, it has to be done right. You know, you want to make sure that you put the resources into it. Staff, as you're aware, has all kinds of other things they're focused on in our direction. So I think it would be positive if we, and this is obviously an important initiative, I think it'd be positive if there are a few councillors, namely yourself, Councillor Shoemaker, and whoever wanted to join you, that were willing to work with staff to help put this thing together. So if you consider that a friendly amendment, we would just add a line to the resolution, just indicating that there would be a subcommittee of council to work with staff. And if you'd like to be part of that, I'd be happy to see that, and any other councillors that wanted to participate.
Absolutely.
Is that friendly, Councillor Grandinetti? So Councillor Shoemaker will sit on that. Any other councillors that want to participate? Councillor Grandinetti, Myers, and Butland. So we have 4 of you. So we're going to add that to the resolution. With that, oh, I thought you were you put your hand up there, Councillor Butland.
That's for speaking.
Oh, okay, so wait. So we'll have Myers, Grandinetti, and Shoemaker.
That's a rough
Okay,
crowd.
so that
No,
job well done,
Butland,
Councillor.
he's going.
Job well done, Councillor Shoemaker. We have next on the list, Councillor Myers.
Thank you. And it is very appropriate that Councillor Butland and I would very much want to support and encourage this. I asked him what year it was, and he hasn't quite told me yet. But some will remember the ABC bowling bid. And that was a bid that took us 2 years to prepare. So we were on a little tighter time frame here. But it was a bid that was done by the Joint Sioux. And it was done to seek to land a huge bowling, the American Bowling, I forget what the C stands for, but Congress, thank you. The American Bowling Congress, it was a 3-month event that would be held in the Twin Sioux, and we had to build the facility for them. And I can still see Dwayne Buchanan, who has since passed away, standing at this podium here and basically standing there with the business plan and saying, Mr. Mayor, this is how you normally do things. We're doing it like this. And it was very impacting. And quite frankly, I am very proud of both of you councillors for doing this. I think it's exciting. It does give us a lot of pride to rally around when you do something like this, and there's a lot of good that comes out of it. We wrote an international manual on the 2 Sioux that I used many years to that, as did my counterparts in Michigan, to bid for things. It was written as an international manual that had never been done before. There will be a lot of good that comes out of this bid, and if you don't reach for the stars, you'll never get them. I think we know who quoted that, but the bottom line is that I'm strongly supportive of it. I'll be glad to help any way I can. And as Councillor Shoemaker knows, we received a very negative email from an individual in this community. And quite frankly, I was glad to see it because I thought, you know what? This is exactly, and you've said it a number of times, Mr. Mayor, this is exactly the issue that we're dealing with. And it's something Councillor Hollingsworth says quite a bit too. We have got to change the tide of negative attitudes and thinking into reaching for the stars and going for them. And we will get there. And I just think that we have as every opportunity as anyone else does. And it will only be through our messaging that will bring the success. And you're absolutely right. If it's not this one, there will be something, because we will get the attention of people, you know, saying, my gosh, they have the audacity to do this? Wow, there must be something going on there. And they'll look further. So congratulations to you for the initiative, and be glad to help any way I can.
Okay, so we have Councillor Christian and Councillor Butland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. By the way, I'm not sure if Councillor Shoemaker mentioned the exchange rate. Did you mention the exchange rate? Shame on you. Anyway, you know, I see both sides of this. I mean, I think it's a good initiative. Yeah, we've got to reach, we've got to stretch. The one thing that intrigues me about this is something that I've always thought about, and that is the idea of partnering with Sault, Michigan. We are an isolated community. I think it would be in the best interest of those that are getting involved in trying to put together or respond to this RFP that you try to make a couple of phone calls to see if, in fact, you know, how much of being part of a metropolitan area weighs into the RFP. Because as much as I appreciate the enthusiasm and the vision, if it's something that's a game breaker, then I wouldn't want to see anybody wasting too much time. But I do think the exercise is a good one in terms of, at the very least, it gets us into that exercise of promoting Sault Ste. Marie and continuing to work for economic development. And I think that's important. I think it's important that we partner with Sault, Michigan. I think that's the type of out-of-the-box thinking we need, not just reaching for these pie in the sky or grandiose schemes in terms of getting a company like this here, but it's the idea of partnering with Sault, Michigan for other ventures as well. I wish you luck. Doesn't hurt to try, and I applaud you for trying. I just think that it would be in everybody's best interest if we perhaps did a little groundwork before we started spending too much time, because if this metropolitan thing or one of the other criteria is paramount for them and we simply don't have it, we have to be pragmatic. We've got to, reconsider what we're up against. So good luck.
I want to challenge you on one point, Councillor Christian.
Yep.
You said we live in a isolated community.
Geographically, we do.
I don't believe that to be the case, because I don't know that you can live in very many communities where you can take a Friday off and go with your buddies to an NHL hockey game and an NFL football game in the same weekend and be back at work for Monday.
Well, that's one way of measuring geographic isolation.
So,
but the fact is that we're a community of 75,000 with very few suburbs, and we have the nearest large community is 3 hours away. So you can use any definition you want. It's 75,000 people and 20,000 people in Sault, Michigan. So that's a total of 95. Call it what you want. It's not a large community.
Oh, I agree with that
I don't necessarily say it's a bad thing. It's the fact is that that's where we are. That could be a positive to a lot of people.
Councillor Butland.
Yep. After hearing what Councillor Shoemaker said, I suspect this is a slam dunk. After hearing that, the decision is probably made, and the other multitude of cities will probably consider dropping out. Seriously, well done. And there was some negative criticism. I received the email, and other people said, have you people lost your mind? It says right away you need a metropolitan area of 1 million people, and there are 53 cities in North America that have more than 1 million people, so we are disqualified. You can't say, well, we're this many miles from Toronto an hour, and you put it all together, and we're there. There's a tremendous number of cities that are at the table. The one that interested me most was Gary, Indiana. Was a city of 180,000 people, now 80,000 people, and it was called the Steel City. So the interesting comparison, if nothing else. So there are another city more or less our size say, hey, you know what, let's take a shot at it. The academia and people in the business say, once the RFP is out, oftentimes the decision has already been made. I don't know if that's true, but it's said enough times by people in the know that it may, in fact, be true. And I was at the meeting last Friday, who thought that the VP of Microsoft Canada would come to Sault Ste. Marie and partnered with Sault College. And as Councillor Shoemaker points out, they presently have 17 employed in great jobs in the IT world, which I don't fully understand what they're doing, but hopefully 100 by next year. And I truly believe she was impressed, saying, hey, what's going on here is pretty significant. So again, who would ever thought VP of Microsoft Canada? So I'm one of those who said, let's not say, staff, make this your sole initiative for the next bit. Let's put something together quick, and don't spend a lot of time, but put something together. Councillor Christian says, let's do a little bit of, let's find out. What would be wrong with having an audience saying, would you entertain Councillor Shoemaker or a couple of people going down and say, here's our presentation. If nothing else, you're going to get, as Councillor Myers has pointed out, you'll get attention. This is the little city that could, or at least wants to, and will probably be the smallest city that is even making application to become that. And if nothing else, it will draw attention. And what not? What if the second headquarters? What if something else? This Microsoft company, in some ways, is, oh my goodness gracious, you know, they're talking about grocery stores and neighborhoods, and that's all fine and dandy, but also there has some negative effects to that. But they're multifaceted, and maybe not the second headquarters, but maybe something else. And I think we can get some very, very positive attention. But I think let's make a call out and say, hey, would you entertain us or you coming down? We'll make our presentation. Good initiative. Thank you very much for introducing it.
Okay, so we have Councillor Hoopen in.
A lot of, what do you say?
Well, let's just stay focused, Councillor. We have Councillor Hoopen in.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Steve. That's great. Did I hear you say that we should send Councillor Shoemaker to do the presentation? That's an excellent idea. I think we should entertain that.
One step at a time here, folks. Councillor Hollingsworth.
Well done, Councillor Shoemaker. Excellent comments around the table, and including Councillor Christian. Don't forget to, I think you mentioned about the call centers, to emphasize the call centers. I know you're going to get a lot of advice and a lot of thoughts over the next little while you put this together. But I think that we also do forget about really emphasizing the partnership we currently do have with Sault, Michigan. And I really think that we still have failed to promote the idea about the workforce that currently crosses the border between Sault, Michigan and Sault, Canada. I don't think our EDC, Economic Development Corporation, has ever done a study to show exactly how many people easily go across that border every day. Not just hospital staff, but financial staff. There's many banks over there that have vice presidents of the branch that are Canadian. So we also, I think, need to emphasize your GDP. We always look at Sault, Canada, but when we look at the GDP for Sault, Michigan and Sault, Canada, that's quite significant. There's many more other ideas, but again, to Councillor Butlin's point of view, you can cite a lot of little towns in the United States and even in Canada that started small and they just had one business and they grew. You have the FedEx hub down in Tennessee, I believe, Omaha, who is the next Silicon Valley. So, and of course, the Mayo Clinic has done extremely well out in Minnesota. But Marquette, we can't forget about Marquette, Michigan as well. And the last piece I'd like you to think about, if you don't mind, is outside of Sault Ste. Marie, we have a lot of successful Saultites, as Councillor Christian has brought to our attention. Is there a possibility to reach out to some Saultites that may have an insight into Amazon or may have a network that could help us as well with your proposal? And last, but also includes the testimonials of our successful businesses that already send out large products, ship large products across Canada and if not across the world successfully and are still here in Sault Ste. Marie.
Okay, so are we going to vote on this? All in favor? Carried unanimously.
Under Agenda Item 8.3, Surplus Municipal Property, a motion by Councillors Grandinetti and Butland. Whereas the City of Sault Ste. Marie maintains a stock of property, some of which is, on occasion, declared surplus and made available for sale to the public. And whereas land which is owned by the City of Sault Ste. Marie does not generate annual property tax revenue, but land which is owned privately does generate property tax revenue. And whereas it is in the best interest of the city to dispose of whatever land it does not require to maximize tax revenue, now therefore be it resolved that the City Legal Department review and inventory all city-owned property, whether vacant or otherwise, and determine which properties can be declared surplus and listed for sale, and to bring back a proposal to City Council on declaring such land surplus and listing it for sale to the public.
Okay, so this is pretty straightforward. Councillor Grandinetti, you're the mover of it. Did you want to speak to it, or?
I just would like to say that I'm sure everyone at the table here knows of some vacant land that the city owns. I know of about 5 in the West End that could be sold and generate some good tax revenue. If I may, I submitted an aerial photo today. If we could put it on the screen, or did you not?
It's on everybody's.
It's on. Okay, I submitted an aerial photo of
everybody has.
Okay, of Holy Family School. On Newcastle, there's 4, I would say about 5 vacant lots that could possibly be sold and turned into single-family dwellings. We could possibly generate $25,000 to $30,000 a year in taxes just from that area, and we could still have a pathway going to the Westwood Park in behind Holy Family School. I rode by there today with my bicycle, and I noticed there's curb cuts there. From years ago when they reconstructed the road, they must have possibly been thinking of having those severed into municipal lots at that time. So.
Yeah, I really thought your aerial photo was interesting, Councillor Grandinetti, and you kind of show where the lots could be in. That's
Yeah, I
something
just
to consider.
and like I'm always in a neighborhood. We grew up in the area, and that's the first thing that come to mind was that itself. And then I'm sure there are some other schools with parks that have a similar situation like this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Butland.
Yes. 20 years ago, last meeting, I brought this up. We went through the exercise and called Laurie Bottas, who was very involved at that time, and he said we were eminently successful in inventory. I created a word last time, inventorized, I think, a whole host, all of the properties, and I threw out $23 million. Well, that was including all of the vacant and not vacant buildings, and everything that we possibly owned came out to $23 million. So it was done at that time, and now we're much more advanced. And at that time, property said, no, this is a momentous task, and we don't want to do it, we can't do it. It was eventually done. But the Municipal Act says that municipalities have to have an inventory of these properties. So Jeff and legal helped me out and came up with a listing of 619 properties. Whether they're all saleable or not, but that's how finite a number of properties we have. So it's not going to take all that long to determine whether there's 15 or 40 or 300 saleable. So I look forward to an early resolve to this resolution. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, any other comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried.
Under Agenda Item 8.4, Local Improvement Charges for Roads, a motion by Councillors Grandinetti and Shoemaker. Whereas the local improvement charges regulations under the Municipal Act allow municipalities to charge residents abutting a street that is being improved a certain portion of the repair costs, and whereas the City of Sault Ste. Marie does charge local improvements in residents to residents in many road reconstruction projects, and whereas it is not the city's standard practice to charge local improvement charges in all road reconstruction projects or in upgrades of roads in between classes of surface treatment. Now therefore be it resolved that staff bring forward to Council a comprehensive local improvement charges policy that will see local improvements charged in all or most of the road reconstruction projects or in projects that upgrade roads to a higher class of surface.
So Councillor Grandinetti, you're the mover on this. You're going to defer to Councillor Shoemaker. Councillor Shoemaker, you want to speak to it?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Grandinetti and I talked about a lot of things after the last meeting, Amazon being one of them, this being another one of them. Currently, we charge local improvements on reconstructions of roads that are Class A roads. So that means when there's asphalt and curbs, and if there's a local improvement on those roads, the residents get charged typically between 5 and 10% of the project cost divided by the frontage of their street. We do not charge local improvements on Class B roads, which is asphalt and ditches, Class C roads, which is surface treatment, and Class D roads, which is gravel. It is a boon, it is a boon to people with Class B, C, and D roads not have to pay for local improvements when their roads get reconstructed. It is a detriment, I guess you could call it, for people with Class A roads to have to pay those local improvements when their roads are reconstructed. So what we're looking for from staff is a report that determines if this process should be equalized across the city, or if it should stay basically as it is. But I think our request of them is to bring us a system, or perhaps recommend against it, that sees local improvements charged to particular roads when they're being reconstructed, regardless of the class of the road.
Very good. Anybody else on that matter? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried.
Under agenda item 8.5, leaf and yard waste. Motion by Councilors Butland and Myers. Whereas leaf and yard waste was not collected curbside for the months of July, August, and September 2017, which precipitated ongoing complaints during the summer months, now therefore be it resolved that staff be requested to prepare a report as soon as practicable with the cost of reinstating the service in 2018, including any other considerations pertinent to this decision.
I think the motion's pretty self-explanatory, but we can give you the time to explain it further if you like, Councillor Butland.
It's self-explanatory, you're right.
Okay.
And I'm tired.
All in favor? Carried.
Under agenda item 8.6, we have a notice of motion by Mayor Provenzano. Whereas Infrastructure Canada is developing and will be running a Smart Cities Challenge, and whereas the Smart Cities Challenge will be soliciting submissions from cities and First Nation communities of all sizes across the country, and whereas there is a substantial funding opportunity for a city or a First Nation if its submission wins the Smart Cities Challenge, and whereas the mayor and staff have met with a representative of the Smart Cities Challenge and expect the competition to begin by the end of the year, and whereas the city of Sault Ste. Marie has begun to prepare to participate in the Smart Cities Challenge and wants to ensure it submits the best bid possible. Now therefore be it resolved that City Council endorse the City of Sault Ste. Marie making a submission to the Smart Cities Challenge and directs the Mayor to strike a Smart Cities Challenge task force, including city staff, the Sault Ste. Marie Innovation Center, and the Sault Ste. Marie Economic Development Corporation, along with any other partners or parties necessary to develop a compelling Smart Cities submission. That will be considered at the next council meeting. Under agenda item 11, bylaws. We have two bylaws that need to be dealt with separately. The first one is bylaw 2017-181, agreement ADSB bulk purchase of ice and field time. A motion by Councilors Hupenin and Nero resolved that bylaw 2017-181 being a bylaw to authorize the execution of an agreement between the city and the Algoma District School Board for the bulk purchase of ice time and field time be passed in open council this 25th day of September 2017.
All in favor? Carried.
A motion by Councilors Hupenin and Nero resolved that bylaw 2017-182 being a bylaw to appoint municipal law enforcement officers to enforce the bylaws on various private properties and to amend Schedule A to bylaw 9305 be passed in open council this 25th day of September 2017.
All in favor? Carried.
Motion by Councilors Hupenin and Nero resolved that all bylaws under item 11 of the agenda under date 2017-09-25 be approved, save and except 2017-181 and 182.
All in favor? Carried.
Motion by Councilors Shoemaker and Turco resolved that this council proceed into closed session to discuss a proposed disposition of property. Further be it resolved that should said closed session be adjourned, that council may reconvene in closed session to continue to discuss the same matter without the need for a further authorizing resolution.
All in favor? Carried.
And a motion by Councilors Hupenin and Turco resolved that this council shall now adjourn.
All in favor?